Good morning. I would like to open today's meeting and welcome everyone in the gallery for joining us today and also those joining us via the live stream. Good morning and welcome. Now, I invite you to stand as Councillor Landsberg acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Sunshine Coast Council acknowledge the Cubby Cubby peoples and Jinibara peoples whose lands and waters we all now share. The traditional owners' unique values, ancient and enduring cultures deepen and enrichen the life of our communities. The Sunshine Coast has been a place of celebration, abundance, connection and kinship for thousands of years, and we commit to working in partnership with our traditional owners to continue these practices and support self-determination through economic and community development. We recognise our shared history and will continue to work in partnership to provide a foundation for building a shared future with the Cubby Cubby people and Jinibara people. We pay our respect to the traditional owners of the Sunshine Coast and to their elders past and present and acknowledge the important role First Nations peoples continue to play within our Sunshine Coast community. Together, we are all stronger.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, if you're able, please remain standing as I invite Bobby Goswami from the Hindu community to provide a blessing. Welcome.
Good morning and namaste. The Bhagavad Gita teaches timeless truth about the divine presence within every heart and the sacred nature of the work we do in the world. The verse reminds us that when we align our action with the higher purpose, our service becomes a form of worship and our workplace becomes a place of light, harmony and upliftment. With that spirit, I offer a blessing from the Gita. Ishwar sarva bhutanam hridayashu tishtati. The Lord resides in the heart of all beings. May we recognize the divine presence in every person who enters this office. May our thoughts and action be guided by compassion, fairness, and unity. Karmanya vadika raste ma phaleshu kadachan. You have right to perform your duty, but not to the fruits. So may we perform our duty with sincerity and integrity without attachment or fear. May we always choose what is right over what is easy. Yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata dharma sansthapanaya sambhavani yuge yuge. So whenever right declines, I manifest to protect the good and restore dharma. May right guide every decision made here. May truth, justice, and fairness be the foundation of our work. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May there be a peace. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Okay, thank you all, and please take your seats. I note this morning that Councillor Johnston is joining us on Teams today, and we move to item 4. Councillors, would someone please move the receipt and confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 23rd of April? Councillor Natoli, seconded. Councillor Bunag. All those in favour? Councillor Johnston, can you put on your camera if you are voting in favour? Thank you very much. That is carried unanimously. Thank you all. There is no mayoral minute today, so councillors, I'll inform you of the conflicts of interest, reminding you of the requirements under the Local Government Act of 2009. It sets out exactly how conflicts of interest for councillors are managed in local government matters. These requirements apply to how we deal with such matters at this meeting. Should you have a conflict of interest in relation to an agenda item, please raise it at the commencement of that item. Okay, we move now on to item 8.1, which is the Quarterly Progress Report, Quarter 3, 2025 to 26. And Mr Baker, our CEO, is going to present this item. Welcome, Mr Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This morning I'm pleased to present the quarterly progress report outlining the progress of the operational plan from the 1st of January to the 31st of March 2026. And this report demonstrates our continued commitment to transparency and accountability and indeed performance. Appendix A outlines the status of all 77 activities this quarter and how we're going about advancing Council's vision and corporate plan goals. This quarter, we've completed activities across community safety and wellbeing, affordable housing, digital innovation, environmental conservation, sustainability and transport planning. Our focus remains firmly on financial sustainability, ensuring our services are affordable and achievable and delivered at the right time. This approach ensures resources are directed to current priorities and positions Council for a long-term financial success. Each activity within the operational plan reflects its percentage completion against the planned progress for the financial year. This indicates whether activities are on track, experiencing delays, or facing significant challenges. As at quarter 3, 84% of our operational plan for 25-26 has progressed as planned. 9 activities have been completed, and 12 activities are experiencing some delays to their expected delivery timeframes. In terms of delays, the medium-density demonstration project has paused due to budget pressures and feasibility challenges. An options paper will inform the future direction of the project. The annual street tree programme tracked slightly behind target this quarter due to access to tree stock and site constraints. Development of the Sunshine Coast Landscape Design Guide was temporarily delayed due to an internal structure realignment. The procurement and delivery options for the Caloundra Community and Creative Hub Town Square are under review to confirm feasibility. The Moffat Beach Seawall project experienced cost and schedule impacts due to product supply issues and summer storm conditions that we all experienced. And procurement for the Fogo Food Organics Garden Organics facility has been delayed due to ongoing research and uncertainty regarding financial sustainability and indeed regulatory compliance. Progress on the Nambour Resource Recovery Centre has slowed to align with Council's broader waste strategy and allow for additional design. The updated costs for the Caloundra Aerodrome Master Plan significantly exceed the estimated costs in the business case, and the Project Gateway review will assess project feasibility and the options that Council have. Award of the construction tender to CTCU, the Caloundra Transport Corridor upgrade, remains subject to Australian government approval processes, and delivery of several coastal capital projects were impacted by the significant weather events at Mooloolaba, Moffat Beach and Golden Beach. We're expected to accelerate those this quarter. But as I said, 84% of the operational plan has progressed as planned. Turning now to some of the highlights this quarter, the Dark Sky Reserve. So Council adopted the Sunshine Coast Dark Sky Reserve Lighting Plan, Management Plan, and endorsed submissions of the Dark Sky Reserve application. The proposed reserve spans almost 900 kilometres in the Mary River catchment and adjoining national parks, and reinforces Council's commitment to the protection of the region's unique character while complementing our UNESCO Biosphere Reserve designation. There are major infrastructure projects and some advocacy associated with that. Council made a pre-budget submission to the Queensland Treasury highlighting key Sunshine Coast priorities, including, most importantly, the Sunshine Coast Indoor Sports Centre, the Nambour Streetscape project, and the improved public transport for the region. Council also responded to the Australian Government's inquiry into local government funding and fiscal sustainability, highlighting key challenges such as cost shifting, the growing expense of asset maintenance, and the indexation of the local government financial assistance grants. Outcomes of this inquiry will be announced by the Australian government later this year. In conclusion, I really would encourage our community to take a moment to read this report, to understand what we are doing to support and shape our region and its future. My thanks go to the executive leadership team, Madam Mayor, to councillors, to council staff, and our valued volunteers and partners. Each of them help deliver our operational plan and contribute to our connected, livable, and thriving region. I'm now delighted to invite the directors to share key achievements and progress aligned to the delivery of the operational plan, and invite Jodie Fielding, Director of Community Strengthening, to address the council. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, John. Good morning, councillors and colleagues. I'm pleased to provide an update on the progress towards our goal of a strong community for the third quarter of 25-26. Overall, our activities have been progressing well, with strong delivery across wellbeing, inclusion and community connection. The Healthy Sunshine Coast program continues to deliver strong performance, with more than 9,000 participants. 87% of them are reporting improved wellbeing. That's demonstrating positive outcomes of this program for our community. We've also made good progress in preparing for the Brisbane 2032 Olympics and Paralympic Games, with strong community input helping to shape our legacy action plan for the Sunshine Coast. In February, the Sunshine Coast Citizens Panel convened to consider the legacy of the Games, ensuring local voices continue to inform our planning and priorities. We look forward to bringing the legacy plan back to Council later this year that integrates that feedback. We've also maintained momentum across broader sports and recreational planning, ensuring the region is well positioned to meet the future demand. Library Plus Caloundra continues to also perform incredibly strongly, with over 85,000 visits this quarter, reflecting high demand for this modern, flexible community space. Across the region, there's also been strong activation of our venues and events, including over 10,000 attendees at the NRL trial matches and over 6,000 attendees at the Somersault Festival. We've continued our coordinated response to homelessness, working closely with partners to deliver winter shelter initiatives, outreach programs and practical support through things like the Amenity Pass program. Unfortunately, we continue to see an increased number of people experiencing homelessness in our region, and this continues to place pressure on our community and our services and resources. Implementation of the Stretch Reconciliation Plan continues, with action across all pillars being delivered. Work has advanced on the First Nations engagement framework to support consistent, coordinated engagement. We've also received 17 First Nation community grants applications, which exceeded our goal for this year. We're progressing key actions under the All Abilities Action Plan, including planning for the 2026 All Access Day in the Park, in partnership with the disability sector. This has been a strong community uptake, with over 49 beach wheelchair bookings and nearly 1 million visits to the Council's digital accessibility tools. Over 320 people are celebrating our community heroes at the Australian Day Community Awards, where 8 recipients were announced from over 100 nominees. We've also held 3 citizenship ceremonies that welcomed over 1,000 new citizens, reflecting the diversity and growth of our community. Our Community Grants program also continues to support grassroots initiatives, with $61,000 distributed across 48 grants, supporting more than 1,000 volunteers this quarter. Finally, we've continued to invest in the creative sector, with strong attendance across exhibitions and programs, and secured $1 million public art grant to support the major placemaking projects across the region. I'll now hand over to Mr. Scott Whittaker, Director for Infrastructure and Natural Assets.
Thank you, Jodie, and through you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, Madam Mayor, councillors, executive and members of the community who are here today and online. Building on Jodie's update, I'm pleased to share several highlights from the Environment and Livability portfolio for this quarter. As John mentioned earlier, at the end of March, we're tracking slightly behind our annual tree planting program. However, we've got actions in place to get that back on track for the end of financial year, where we're anticipated to meet our target of 3,200 for the financial year. It's also great to see strong progress on a number of our major infrastructure initiatives through the quarter, including the Golden Beach seawall improvement works nearing completion and the commencement of the First Avenue streetscape project as well. A range of the environmental initiatives have progressed, including planning for a nature-based recreation precinct at the Sunshine Coast Mountain Bike Centre and Mountain Bike Olympic Venue Legacy facility. At this precinct, we're investigating opportunities to progress the Nambour to Coolum Trail activation and connections into the Blue Heart through the $5 million City Deals funding that we've received. The Community Engagement Summary Report for Golden Beach and Bulcock Beach Coastal Hazard Adaptation Precinct Planning was finalised and published on Council's website. The engagement indicated and reinforced to Council that the community is passionate about issues related to coastal hazards, and there is a strong recognition for the need for long-term coastal hazard adaptation planning in the area. The Invasive Weeds project has progressed artificial intelligence drone data capture to train machine learning models for detecting key invasive weeds. And finally, from an environmental initiatives point of view, a flying fox education program called A Parliament of Animals was piloted in the Mary Cane Cross Scenic Reserve to assist students in better understanding the many considerations associated with flying fox management. And the final highlight that I'd like to identify this morning was the nominations for the Sunshine Coast Biosphere Awards 2026 opened in March. I'll now hand over to Keith Parsons, our Chief Financial Officer, who'll share his insights for this quarter.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning all. Through you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, councillors, executives and members of the public in present and online. I'm pleased to present the Q3 progress towards our resilient economy goal, highlighting some of the key achievements and ongoing initiatives that strengthen the region's economic resilience. Progress continues within the Maroochydore City Centre priority development area, and key projects are advancing well. The Maroochy Private Hospital and 51st Avenue commercial buildings adjoining this building, the City Hall here, developed by Walker Corporation, have both reached practical completion and are welcoming their first tenants. The Sol by Walker residential towers are nearly sold out, with construction well underway. Works have also commenced on NextDC's SC2 data centre. During the quarter, responsibility for Sun Central, that assists with the management of the Maroochy City Centre development, has also been transitioned in-house to Council. This will help streamline the governance, strengthening strategic oversight and positioning us to deliver greater value for the community and long-term outcomes for the city centre. In the investment and growth goal, the Sunshine Coast national profile has been elevated through an Innovation Oz article highlighting our subsea to space capabilities, along with KPMG recognition identifying the region as a national leader in investment attraction, particularly in digital infrastructure. Key activities included promoting major projects such as the $170 million Sunshine Coast Airport domestic terminal redevelopment, showcasing local business success stories including Grease Boss's partnership with Castrol and expanding international trade and investment opportunities through Trade and Invest Queensland missions, export programs and sister city engagements. These activities generated 69 leads, more than 51,000 impressions and over 1,400 engagements, with investment outcomes forecast to deliver $24.5 million in economic impact and 74 new full-time equivalent jobs. The Mooloolaba Foreshore Revitalisation Project continues to progress, with over 550 seawall piles completed. While reopening of the seawall in front of the Surf Club has shifted to May 2026, the overall project remains on track. The beach has remained accessible and accommodation providers have reported strong summer bookings. Supporting local business remains a focus. The International Women's Day breakfast attracted strong participation and provided valuable insights into the priorities and challenges facing women-led businesses, which will inform future engagement. The Resilient Business series has now transitioned to an online format, ensuring ongoing and flexible access to resources that support business preparedness and adaptability. In procurement, guideline reviews have been completed with ongoing monitoring of local and First Nations spend, and a working group established to develop a First Nations procurement strategy aligned with our Stretch Reconciliation Action Plan. Digital innovation continues to enhance service delivery, with the AI Development Assistant tool now embedded as business as usual. Since its launch, it has received approximately 1,900 inquiries, with over a third outside business hours, demonstrating improved accessibility and strong uptake. Finally, the region's innovation ecosystems continue to grow, with the Innovation at Altitude 2026 Start Here event attracting over 100 participants and selling out, strengthening connections between founders, industry leaders and investors. Overall, this quarter reflects strong momentum across major projects, investment attraction, business support and digital innovation, contributing to a resilient and high-value regional economy. I'll now hand over to Deborah Robertson, our Director for Sustainable Growth and Planning, to present the Managing for Growth goal. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Keith and colleagues, and good morning, councillors, members of our public in the chamber and also those online. It is my pleasure to provide the quarterly report for Managing for Growth portfolio for this last quarter. During quarter 3, as the CEO has already advised, design was completed for sections 1, Omra Avenue to Arthur Street, and section 2, Arthur Street to Nickel and Way Industrial Avenue of the Alexandra Transport Corridor. A public tender for the construction works for section 1 and section 2 was released on the 3rd of March and closing on the 3rd of June this year. Council has previously committed to funding section 1 and has now secured Queensland Government funding for section 2. Council continues to collaborate with the Department of Transport and Main Roads to review the proposed alignment and station locations for stage 3, Petition to Sunshine Coast Airport. Council and the Queensland Government continue to progress the delivery of the Sunshine Motorway connection to the extension of Suncoast Beach Drive. Environmental assessments have commenced and the reference design from 2010 is being reviewed to ensure its alignment with current safety and active transport requirements. Works continue to support a safe road network, with over 400 road safety requests having been completed. The Ride Score Active Schools program was launched at 3 new schools in March. Students at Pacific Paradise, Curramundi and Golden Beach State Schools joined students from 11 other schools across the region in shifting travel from car trips to riding and scootering trips. A portfolio-wide inspection regime to assess the condition of Council's community tenanted buildings commenced, prioritising assets in poor or in very poor condition. Condition data is being updated into asset management systems to inform asset lifecycle management, forward capital planning and asset management plans. Assets at the end of life are being assessed to inform capital investment decisions. Council also progressed the stormwater network improvements during this quarter. This included progressing the Tanawa Street East Yurumba stormwater upgrade project detailed design and property acquisitions at Battery Hill to support flood mitigation and future stormwater upgrades. Overall, this represents a strong quarter of progress for the Managing for Growth portfolio. I will now hand over to Jane Want, Director Business Transformation and Performance, for an update on the Organisational Excellence portfolio. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Deborah. And through you, Madam Mayor, good morning, councillors, executive, members of the public and those online. I'm pleased to share an update for the quarterly progress for organisational excellence for our organisation, covering quarter 3 from the period of January to March this year. This quarter has been about building strong foundations and delivering real value for our community. I'm pleased to confirm that the draft service catalogue was strengthened through internal consultation, and it's helped inform councillor and executive workshops on service priorities. This work will now flow into the Citizens Panel on service delivery and budgets, helping shape future programs and how we resource them and share our performance with the public. We've also continued to make strong progress on our digital plan. Highlights include maintaining zero reportable cybersecurity breaches, reducing duplication to support financial sustainability, and a key focus on strengthening our systems, a key one being our property and rating program, which is streamlining hundreds of processes with the aim of improving the customer experience and our employee experience. We've also seen the benefits of innovation firsthand, with Copilot now in use across the organisation, already delivering efficiencies and opening up new ways of working for our people. Customer experience remains a strong focus, with more than 87,000 customers being supported during our peak periods, with a 94% reporting ease of contact. Satisfaction and trust ratings remain strong, and insights continue to inform our targeted areas for improvement. Work on strengthening our customer experience plan will continue throughout the year to ensure that these improvements are embedded and sustained. On our people priorities, workforce and succession planning continue to progress well under our people plan. Workforce planning is being conducted across the organisation to ensure we have the right capabilities and skills to support our community needs into the future. Finally, our commitment to culture, wellbeing and safety remains strong. From community-focused events to embedding the actions in response to our Vibe Culture Survey, we're using feedback to guide practical actions. Critical safety initiatives, including our critical control management and psychosocial risk projects, are progressing to support a safe and healthy workforce for our people. Overall, this quarter reflects strong teamwork, solid progress and a continued focus on delivering meaningful outcomes for our organisation and, more importantly, for our community. I'd like to thank my executive leadership team for a great team effort, the Mayor and councillors and all of our staff and valued volunteers and partners for their ongoing contribution and support to our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that comprehensive review to all of you. Councillors, can I have someone to move this item? Councillor Broderick, and a seconder, Councillor Hungerford. Thank you both. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you, and thank you to all of our team for all the great work today in presenting the report. I also wanted to point out as well that this month, we've also had our National Volunteers Week, where we've celebrated all of our incredible volunteers throughout of the community, just as John mentioned as well. And like he said, without them, our community wouldn't be as connected and thriving as it would be. So a huge shout out to our volunteers. So thank you for all of the work that you do. I see some of them in the gallery actually, so thank you for your work. So the quarterly progress report outlines how we are tracking against the activities we've committed to deliver in our operational plan for this year. And Councillor Hungerford and I have the privilege of sharing this portfolio for organisational excellence. And with that, we are passionate about Council being a high-performing, agile and community-centred organisation. That's the goal. And the goal, just as Jane has reminded us now, is to build strong foundation and real value for our community. And that's what we're aiming to do. So just before our colleagues get up, a couple of key highlights for us is our customer request management system. We've talked about a few things that we've started to implement, and one of those is a system called Tibro, and it's more modern and ready to engage with our customer requests. And since that implementation, early results have shown improved response times for our community and customer requests being handled faster and more consistently. And it also allows our staff to handle them more efficiently and at a higher capacity as well. Some of our major events, we've had 10 sponsored major events generating an estimated economic impact of $17.2 million for our region, which is $10.2 million more than the same quarter last year. And we also exceeded that same result by 57,000 people, representing an increase of 54%. Some of those contributors, of course, were the 2 National Rugby League trials that we held at the Sunshine Coast Stadium, which we're happy to do. And road rehab, which is one of our favourites, and I know Councillor Johnston is there online as well. I'll jump in for him for the 4.3 million invested in rehabbing our 10 kilometres of roads this quarter, compared to 3.1 million for the same quarter last year. So we're doing our best to increase those. We're doing some great things, so thank you to all the staff who've been working really hard and tirelessly in trying to pull all of this together for this quarter. And I'll just leave it open for the rest of our colleagues now. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I also rise to support our Q3 progress report for Council. In regards to, there's so much in this report and so many different departments that we actually continue to deliver right across the coast, and just to gauge the amount of investment in our region is really right here in front of us this morning. A couple of things I just want to touch on through my fellow colleagues and the Chamber is, obviously we saw Ride Score kick off as well with the 3 new schools come on board. And I attended obviously Golden Beach personally, which was a wonderful morning. I know Councillor Tim was at Curramundi, and we signed up I think 145 students on that first day. And that really shows the strength of our engagement for really trying to encourage our community to look at alternative transport opportunities to get our kids to school. And to see the excitement of all the kids riding to school with their parents, and the investment that we've done, especially around Golden Beach, and I will just speak about that in regards to improving crossings and pedestrian safety, is a credit to Council. We continue to invest in public safety and transport initiatives, and that has been an absolute win for us. I know one of our directors touched on the Caloundra Transport Corridor upgrade, and there's probably no one in this chamber more invested into that road than myself, but I know we've been, obviously very supportive of this road. It's been on the Council's horizon since 2003. A long-term project that needs to be delivered as quickly as possible. And we look forward to those environmental approvals coming through. We touched on the coastal hazard adaptation precinct planning, and Scott made a comment around that. And I continue to actually share to the community the important work that we do in designing a lot of our infrastructure. And Council are learning along the way. And this is an example that, as a council, that we are obviously constantly impacted by changing conditions and erosion and events. But the facilities and the upgraded infrastructure that we have delivered along that 3-kilometre section of Golden Beach is outstanding. And we continue to invest in that region. And as we were one of the first councils to take on the Coastal Hazard Adaptation Strategy, which was an initiative from the state government for all coastal councils in the state to deliver, we have delivered, and we are showing the way in how we lead in that way of improving our foreshore assets. And that's a credit to our team as well. The other, I'd just like to finish off on, so inspiring to see 28% increase in the events in regards to visitor attraction at the Event Centre in Caloundra. The Event Centre, as our largest indoor performing arts centre on the Sunshine Coast, continues to kick goals, and we've seen in the last annual report we had over 100,000 attendees to performances there in Caloundra. And just to touch on our digital economy, the investment that this council has done, just interstate, just to touch on the Geelong Growth Horizon report, our region, as part of a national profiling, was actually identified in their report and recognised as a standout comparator for our Tech in Paradise and our identity, advanced digital infrastructure, including the investment in the subsea cable, and industry-leading in data-driven investment into our region. So another example of how we're leading in that space, or in that digital space as well. But look forward to my fellow colleagues as well discussing this report, and I'll be voting in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I've got a few questions to start with. I have a question regarding the stadium expansion. We've been made aware that GECA has awarded the design contract, and I just wanted to clarify that Sunshine Coast Council will have input into that design process to ensure that best practices is applied, because we will be the ones landed with the operational and maintenance costs going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jodie Fielding, coming to answer that question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, as part of the project framework agreement, we're in negotiation with GECA at the moment. We have clauses within that give us the ability to be at the table during the design process. We've seen that already in good faith with the awarding of the architecture project, or the architecture component of the project. We've already held a workshop at the stadium with them, so we're already in train with that work, so it's positive.
Yep, that's great news. I have another question possibly for Jodie as well. The All Abilities Action Plan, a little while ago I had the privilege of meeting with someone from our deaf community. We have got the Australian Deaf Games happening right here on the Sunshine Coast from the 4th to the 11th of July, across venues from Mooloolaba to Caloundra, with an expected 1,300 participants, and that will then also have a number of supporters and family members coming with them. I know we've struggled in the past, but I was just wondering if Council has been able to engage with our deaf community to have input into our All Abilities Action Plan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm aware that in the All Abilities Action Plan reference group, when the plan was developed, we had a visually impaired member, but how that's floated through the actions, I'd have to take the rest on notice.
Thank you. Thank you. Coastal Hazard Adaptation Planning. I just had a question about the activity that was to deliver the precinct planning for a number of sites across the Sunshine Coast, being Golden Beach, Caloundra, Maroochydore and Mooloolaba. Due to the hazards being experienced firsthand at Golden Beach and Caloundra, it made sense to prioritise those areas first. Is the team on track to deliver the precinct planning for the other two locations, being Mooloolaba and Maroochydore, in the remainder of this financial year?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I thank the councillor for the question. We as council have identified 19 coastal hazard adaptation precincts and that require further investigation and planning. We've been able to prioritise those precincts, and as you talked about, we've done some in the southern part of the council area at the moment. For Maroochydore and Mooloolaba, we've received some grant funding that's enabled us to complete the investigations and options analysis, so we've been able to progress the project for those two precincts. That's enabled us to understand the local factors and explore the options that we have. At this stage, that's complete, but we would need additional funding required to take it to the next step to look at doing some business case development to prepare it from a delivery point of view.
Thank you. I know that the community engagement was quite substantial, and I'm sure that they'll be really interested to see what comes out of that. Thank you, Scott. I'm not sure if this question is for Keith or for Deborah. Keith mentioned in his presentation about the 69 leads that were generated through internal targeted marketing activities under economic development. I was just curious, more so than anything, as to what types of businesses or what industries have shown interest in our region.
Deborah Robinson is coming to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Suarez, and through you, Madam Mayor. There are a number of leads that have come through, primarily around Maroochydore City Centre, and that is primarily in the professional services, but also in the tech sector as well. And we heard about testing tech in Paradise, which has brought a lot of people to this region. Notwithstanding that, Google is also one of the areas that has actually been through those leads has actually come to the region. So it's primarily professional services and the tech industry are the two areas primarily. And the focus has been on Maroochydore City Centre.
Okay. Thank you. I'll speak to it now, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Just following on, I guess, from what Deborah had to say, I did see something on through our channels about a seafood industry who presented to international markets and gained some significant contracts, and they believe that this is just the start of something much bigger for them. So congratulations to the ECDev team for the work that they've done there. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. The youth plan, I know it's not in the environment and livability strategy or portfolio space, but yesterday I had the privilege of meeting Noah Champion, who is the youth member for Ninderry of the 31st Queensland Youth Parliament. And he specifically mentioned the youth plan as a document that he was using to advocate for the region of Ninderry. So he also mentioned that he was he wished he had been able to have some involvement in that as well, and spoke a lot about more engagement and offered some really fantastic suggestions for getting youth engaged here on the Sunshine Coast as well. So it was a refreshing convo, and I wish Noah all the very best in his role. For the environment and livability portfolio, just wanted to offer some local insights into the mountain bike facility. Scott mentioned the progress that we're making there for the 2032 games. We've, in council, received a lot of interest from various user groups who are really looking forward to the legacy benefits of that facility. Not only just users who will go there and use it for mountain biking, but other groups who do multi-event type events, swimming as well as riding. And we've got a lot of natural attractions nearby that can be utilised. So they're really looking forward to this facility coming up and running. I'm also excited to see the Nambour to Coolum Trail and Blue Heart Recreation Hub sort of combine together to get a kickstart in that space. And I want to thank the coalition of community groups who continue to advocate at all three levels of government to try and get the Nambour to Coolum Trail to fruition, get some planning on the ground. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to observe the planning input into the Blue Heart Recreation Hub, and I want to thank the council officers and the external stakeholders for their time and effort in putting that work to get that up and running and get the design happening. And we're looking forward to seeing the outcomes of that proposal. And I also want to just shout out to the federal government. Thank you for the $5 million that contributed towards that through the ComSec City deal. Waste. The CEO mentioned the continued challenges that we're facing in our waste initiatives, including the shifting strategic priorities with changes in government, evolving environmental requirements, infrastructure needs and their rising costs, and uncertainty around the state waste levy. And while these challenges are really complex, they are also driving innovation. So we're seeing emerging technologies and industries increasingly recognising waste as a resource. And so while this is hard work to try and get all that together and work out how we as a region will respond for the best outcome for our community, I know that those involved are really committed to navigating those challenges and identifying sustainable solutions. So I just want to give a shout out and thank you for all of the work that CEO, ELT and all of the teams across council and especially under the Environment and Livability Strategy do. The work can be challenging, but I know it's also very rewarding, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Burns.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you, obviously rising to support this because it's how do you not support work that's already happened? Because you don't want to stand up and say we didn't like that. But really quickly, in terms of a couple of things that I'm really proud of for this council, the dark sky efforts that we did last quarter, where we just progressed that to application and that, and I'm really excited about that. I think it is going to be something significant for our hinterland communities, but as a region, it really will put us on the map, and particularly the night sky map, and really looking to being able to share favourable outcomes when we're able to about that. I love street trees, and so I like to hug trees and all that sort of stuff. But the street tree program is really significant, and it's significant because as you drive around the coast, you're starting to see so many of our streets just so beautifully treed with these things, and it actually changes the complete feel and outlook of these suburbs. It will actually reduce urban heating in these areas, which is one of the significant reasons. It does create biodiverse spaces, so we actually see more species come back into our neighbourhood areas. It actually does provide us with a climate mitigation effort, so it helps minimise things after disasters, and through that it slows down rainwater runoff and things like that into our stormwater systems. Therefore, it actually gives our stormwater systems more capacity. So these street trees are significant. I'm really proud to see it. $500 231 planted last quarter, slightly under what we were aiming for. But with over 2,200 trees planted this year, financial year alone, it's a really significant outcome, and I think it's something that we'll be proud of for the next 30 or 40 years. And the last thing I wanted to just highlight and was to say thank you to is the 75% completion of the Moffat seawall. Somebody who lives down that way, that's been a really complex and challenging project for the team, delivered by our civil teams here. In seeking to save those Norfolk pines based off the feedback from the community there, it really has made the project a lot more complex, and it has made it more expensive. That's the facts, because it takes a lot longer to do so and it's a more complicated way of constructing. They've changed the methodology and have really got a wriggle on now, and it's really looking flash, and even since this report was completed, it's even further done. But I wanted to say a special thank you to the community reference group that was formed in regards to the seawall project, chaired by Councillor Terry. The feedback and the engagement from that group of community people, neighbours, people that are interested in seeing their area go well, has been really, really helpful. And I just wanted to say thank you to them for the amount of time and effort, the questions, the challenges, the input, the feedback, the support that they've provided, and even more than that, actually being champions of that as it's progressed too. So thank you to them. It's a really good example, and I think that will be a significant outcome for the southern end of the coast once that's completed and the landscape plan's done. So thanks again to all the staff, for the exec, for your leadership, and really looking forward to seeing what this looks like for us at the end of Q4, where we get to celebrate a year of really good outcomes. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, good morning. I'd just like to start with a couple of questions to Ms Fielding in relation to the work that Council has done around homelessness. So, through you, Madam Mayor, the first question I have is around how much funding has Sunshine Coast Council provided to the Sunny Coast Sleeper Bus?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this financial year we funded the Sunny Coast Sleeper Bus $20,000 in the combination of operational funding to support their establishment in the Nambour district, and we've also provided them a grant funding in the last major grant round. Last financial year, Madam Mayor also provided financial support through her discretionary fund for training of the sleeper bus. In addition to that, we've also done a number of in-kind support activities to help them establish in Nambour through permitting, finding them suitable locations for the bus to operate in Nambour and to connect them with the local community groups there.
Brilliant, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, just one more question, Ms Fielding, before you go. The Nambour Homelessness Forum that was jointly convened by Madam Mayor and also the state government, there was a number of announcements that came out in the last quarter, and one of those announcements was around additional housing outreach to IFYS, particularly in Nambour. Has there been any increase in housing outreach or services that we're aware of across the region in response to the homelessness issue that we're facing, other than what's been announced in Nambour?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd have to take that on notice, so I'm not across the state's commitment more broadly than Nambour.
Madam Mayor, sorry I've turned my light off. Thank you very much, Ms Fielding, and I'd like to also just start by thanking the staff who have obviously delivered the work that we're getting able to celebrate here today. I think it's fair to say that none of us go around filling potholes, none of us go around digging holes for street trees, although I reckon Councillor Burns might. But the reality is that this is a team effort, and we are the lucky custodians to be able to share the work that our officers, staff have done. There are two things that I wanted to make particular mention of in this quarterly report today. The first is the progress that we're making in partnership with the Queensland State Government around delivering and planning for a new motorway entry and exit at Mount Coolum. Now, I have lived in and around Coolum for my entire life, and I know for a fact that extending Suncoast Beach Drive and South Coolum Road has literally been talked about for decades. You know, you didn't buy property along Suncoast Beach Drive without knowing that one day there would be a road connecting to the motorway there. And the fact that we are now into a phase of design for these extensions in partnership with the work that the state government is doing is exceptional. It is real progress and I'm really excited about it. But what's also really important and also extremely, timely is the fact that in our state budget submission, we have continued to advocate to the state government around the duplication of the Sunshine Motorway between Pacific Paradise and Perigian, because we know that delivering this extension of Suncoast Beach Drive and South Coolum Road onto the motorway is absolutely going to alleviate congestion and traffic along the David Low Way, but it certainly won't fix the traffic and congestion that people sit in at the moment if they're coming north or south along the motorway. And this is a growing community. The Sunshine Coast Motorway, or Sunshine Motorway I should say, is not fit for purpose as it currently stands, and we need to see investment and direction about how that is going to be improved as a package as part of the works that we are going to be delivering for Suncoast Beach Drive and South Coolum Road being extended. The other thing that I wanted to also reflect on in the quarterly report was around our response to homelessness. And Ms Fielding provided you the figures about what Council has been doing, particularly around the Sunny Coast Sleeper Bus. And the Madam Mayor had a forum that was engaged in Nambour specifically, and the Mayor and Council Law should be congratulated for the advocacy that they put forward to actually deliver great outcomes there. What I would say though is that, if we did an amber light, red light, green light scenario about our response as a society in terms of homelessness and how we're actually going the wrong way. So if you look at the figures that we have from things like Sunshine Coast Zero, which tracks the amount of people who are homeless in our region, from the 1st to the 30th of April 2026, we have 624 people who are described as actively being homeless. And the problem that we have is that there is more inflow onto that list than there is outflow. So there are 85 newly identified people and 22 people have been housed. So you do the math, we house 22 people, we identify another 85 that are in need of housing. That is a really big issue that Council is actually not primarily responsible for actioning on. But if I reflect on what Bobby said in his blessing to us earlier, it's actually about what's doing, things that are right and good, but aren't necessarily easy. And I think right now our community is seeing that difficulty that we are having in trying to manage people who are rough sleeping in public spaces. As a council, we do not have broad powers to simply move people on in our communities and in our public spaces. That is a job that council cannot do on its own. And I think it's really, really important to say this very, very bluntly. What other levels of government can help council do is actually work with us to keep delivering different services, different housing models, and not buck passing, not throwing council under, buses, sleep or otherwise, because realistically, this is not a council issue that we can fix on our own. We have skin in the game, money to the Sunny Coast Sleeper Bus. We have response services officers. We have provided affordable housing, but this is an issue that council cannot own on its own and should not. And I'll continue to advocate for better support from the state and federal governments to address homelessness going forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, as we heard Councillor Tim put it together well, we're looking at what we have done, and generally what we have done is a very positive contribution to our community. What I felt I wanted to do this morning in relation to this quarterly report is to consider some of those, what I'll describe as very, very small things we do in our community, delivering our strong community strategy, that make a big difference for individuals. And also to demonstrate how our community services development team actually go about their work throughout the community, bringing together all sorts of organisations to enable great things to be done to help our community right across the whole coast. And the one I'll start with is our Healthy Sunshine Coast program. Not many people will be aware of it, but for those who are, it provides amazing activities and things for them to be engaged with. From Qigong, laughter yoga and aqua aerobics, there are people throughout our community who are finding huge benefit from that, with a very high satisfaction rate of 87%, and people commenting that this low-cost model program is providing them with social connections that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have, and also improving their own health and well-being at the same time. And these are factors that we know through research done by our universities, nationally and internationally, that social connection is one of the most important things around a healthy, active life of any individual. And this very, very small program from our extensive range of services and activities that Council does has a big impact on our community. And it's these little things that make the biggest difference. But because they're little, they're easily overlooked, and we're not always aware of them when we're looking at the big things that Council does. Other things that have happened, the Sunflower Initiative has been implemented, and we provided training to over 40 students from the STEPS organisation so that they could understand what the Sunflower Initiative is and how it will help them in their daily lives. We also continue to support and use the Surge program, with I believe now every Sunshine Coast venue is available through the Surge program. And that has again a huge impact for our community who want to accessing our venues. And that's not just a council thing. Surge can be used by any business and venue across the coast who wish to engage with people who need to prepare and plan their day before they leave the house so that they can confidently go and interact in our community in the same way that everyone else does. And of course, we continue to work hard to have our libraries available as the glue that is a place and a location to hold community together, a focus point for people to extend and build their knowledge, and to also be able to connect with other members of the community and change and attend a huge range of programs that are provided by our library teams. We've also had Horizon Festival, the planning, and now we've delivered it. A fantastic outcome. There's two more things I want to mention, if I may, and that's the Stretch Reconciliation Action Plan. To achieve a stretch RAP is an amazing achievement for any organisation, and particularly one of our size and scale. And it's now given us the framework and the impetus to make significant difference in our First Nations procurement policy, and also to be able to attract more First Nations organisations towards our community grants program. A program that in this last quarter, through $100,000 worth of funding, actually created in our community more than $300,000 worth of benefit through those community organisations who got the funding. That is a tremendous result of the little things that we do. And I would just like to finish on one part of our community development team where they bring together multiple organisations to help our community address one of the most horrific things that happens in our community around domestic and family violence. May is Domestic and Family Violence Awareness Month. And you may have already attended an event this month already, but the planning for that happened a long time ago. And our team brought together a whole range of organisations. We had Red Rose, Centrecare, QPS, Sunshine Coast Lightning, DV Safe Phone, Zonta, and many more. So it's not council working on its own, it's council connecting, linking, collaborating with many organisations to deliver services, projects and benefits for the whole community. So thank you. I will obviously be supporting this today and wish to support the little things that we keep doing to have a huge impact for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the CEO and senior management for giving us the detailed information within this operational plan. And of course, a number of councillors have also mentioned specific things. I'm going to probably stay more on the higher level rather than talk about specific matters. And in particularly with my role as a portfolio councillor, dealing with economic development and tourism, along with Councillor Terry, And I note the encouraging signs in the economic development, especially with the support for local businesses, tourism activity and investment attraction. Particularly in this current economic climate, maintaining momentum in these areas is vital. The report indicates that Council is actively working to position the Sunshine Coast as a resilient and competitive regional economy, and Councillor Terry mentioned some of those programs that we've been involved. And I know that the Sunshine Coast is being seen in other areas as a leader in many of those areas. And just acknowledge, yesterday was at Ford Fest, even though it's not part of this operational plan, at the wharf, fantastic day. And the keynote speaker was an incredible entrepreneurial person from Noosa. And he spoke glowingly of one of our economic development managers and just their capability. And I will mention to Deborah who that person was, but just so that we acknowledge that even people from outside our own region are acknowledging the tremendous work that our economic development team are doing. And today they continue upstairs at Altitude 9. So if any of the councillors have the opportunity to go up there, have a look at how collaborative and collaboration is working in different sectors and how we as a council are able to bring that together. However, while acknowledging these achievements, it's equally important that we address the major concerns and challenges identified in the report. One of the most pressing issues remains budget pressures and financial sustainability. The rising costs, particularly in construction materials, service delivery, are placing increasing strains on council's ability to deliver projects within original budgets. It's not unique to our region, but it does require careful prioritisation and transparent decision-making to ensure that we maintain fiscal responsibility while meeting communities' expectations. The report also highlights on ongoing pressures related to population growth and urban development. And Councillor Bonet, just one of those classic things is the lack of affordable housing and options for people, and of course the increasing pressure that we're facing from homelessness. And again, we're not the only region that is facing those many challenges. South East Queensland is under enormous pressure. So the Sunshine Coast continues to be a highly desirable place to live, but with that comes increasing demands on roads, parks, waste services and community infrastructure. Ensuring that growth is well managed, infrastructure keeps pace, and our lifestyle values are protected remains one of Council's most significant challenges. Additionally, we must remain vigilant regarding service demand and operational capacity. As the community grows, expectations around service levels also increases. Balancing efficiency with quality service delivery is critical, and we must ensure that our organisation is adequately positioned to meet this demand. Finally, I note the importance of community trust and engagement. Reports such as this are essential in providing transparency, but they must also be supported by ongoing, meaningful communication with our residents. Ensuring that our community understands both our achievements and our challenges helps build confidence in Council's decision-making. In closing, this quarterly report presents a solid picture of continued delivery and commitment across the Council operations. There is much to be proud of, and I thank our staff for their professionalism and dedication. At the same time, the report is timely reminder that we must remain focused, disciplined and forward-looking. By addressing the challenges identified, particularly around financial sustainability, project delivery and growth management, we can ensure that we continue to deliver the positive outcomes for our community. I commend this report to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillors, I also rise to speak in favour of this report as it is presented to us and to our community. And I too would like to begin by saying a huge thank you to the officers of Sunshine Coast Council, each and every one at every level, who have worked to deliver these projects and programs, from the everyday little things, as we've heard, to the major and very significant projects as well. If you look at the dark skies and the adoption of the plan, recognising the key aspects that make our Sunshine Coast so special. And we hear from our community consistently about the things that they value in our region and what does make this region, the Sunshine Coast, so dearly held by our community. And our environment and our dark skies play into that very importantly. The return of the Sunshine Coast Australia Day Community Awards was a fabulous celebration of those and for those who do so much to support our community, and recognising not only those who received awards, but everyone who was nominated, because that was significant for our community, and recognising as well that it is Volunteer Week, and a huge thank you I'd like to put on the record to all of our volunteers across the Sunshine Coast who work tirelessly each and every day to support not only us, but every resident would benefit in some way from volunteers. And I was lucky to meet with SES volunteers last night. Across the 8 groups on the Sunshine Coast, we have more than 300 people who volunteer with the SES, and we met and wore orange for Wear Orange Wednesday. So, thank you to all of our volunteers. If you look at the AI Development Assistance Tool, the innovative way that we are embracing technology and working, of course, importantly, within all of the cybersecurity, within all of the safeguards, everything that we need to do to ensure that our residents and ratepayers are safe, but also moving forward, embracing that technology, understanding the enormous potential it delivers us to deliver efficiencies, because that is also what our residents and ratepayers would expect of us. So that is most definitely in terms of our digital plan and our AI capability to make sure that we are understanding our responsibilities in this space. If I look at the citizens panel, the continuing community engagement, the fact that we as a councillor cohort and then also the organisation more broadly value in every way the thoughts, feelings and feedback of our community, that we value it, that we listen to it, that we consider it and respond to it, is most definitely the role that we have taken, stepped into and really see delivering. And Councillor Burns mentioned the community reference groups. We have a number of them across the region, and thank you to all of those people. And just understand that you most definitely are heard. More than 1,700 businesses accessed specialist advice and information, and we know that small businesses are the lifeblood of our community here on the Sunshine Coast. The little things, not so little. Nearly 6,000 hectares of landscape and garden beds maintained. And we know that for the people across the Sunshine Coast, those little things, the way our parks and gardens, our roadways, the way they look and feel is of vital importance. And we recognise that these have an impact in everyday life. So our aim is to be connected, livable and thriving as a Sunshine Coast, to assist our community to feel connected to each other and to us, for the Sunshine Coast to be livable, protecting the lifestyle into the future, because we are under enormous pressure from growth, but how we deliver and manage that growth into the future to ensure our lifestyle is protected is key to that livability, and that we are thriving in every way. Our community groups, our residents, our business community, and we as a council going forward. So thank you to every person who has contributed to this quarter. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of people who work each and every day to make this happen, and our sincere thanks to you all. I commend this report to you. Councillor Broderick, would you like to close? No, enough has been said on this report to date. Thank you. Okay, councillors, I will now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? And thank you, Councillor Johnston. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you all. Okay, next up is item 8.2, a material change of use to establish a tourist park at 29 Roberts Street, Glasshouse Mountains. And we have Mr. Alderson here to present, who will be entering the chamber in a moment. That was a big introduction. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Mayor, councillors, Mr. CEO. Today I'm presenting a report to you for a development application proposing a tourist park at 29 Roberts Street, Glasshouse Mountains. The application is being presented to council because it has attracted a significant public interest, with 115 properly made submissions objecting to the proposed development. The image on the left shows the site in context of the surrounding landmarks and town centres. Glasshouse Town Centre is approximately 1 kilometre to the south of the site. The site has a frontage to Roberts Street along its southern boundary and currently contains a detached dwelling, which is proposed to be retained. The site is adjoined by 11 residential dwellings along the eastern boundary. While zoned rural, these lots are more akin to being low density residential in character. The North Coast Railway line forms the western boundaries of the site. It's noted 1.9 hectares of the site adjacent to the railway corridor has been identified for the resumption of state government for the purposes of the North Coast Railway line upgrades. It's noted all proposed works are outside of the resumption area. To the north are agricultural and cropping uses, including a macadamia farm, and to the south is a vacant rural zone site. The original proposal consisted of a tourist park, function facility and food and drink outlet land uses. There was a total of 13 buildings proposed, including a central function facility cafe building, 8 accommodation cabins, 2 amenity buildings and a viewing platform over the dam. There was also a caravan and camping area with 12 sites at the western end of the site. There was also rural farm experiences for guests were proposed, including horse paddocks, market gardens and a timber mill. The application was publicly notified for 15 business days between the 30th of October and 20th of November 2024. A total of 115 properly made submissions were received, with an additional 2 submissions being not properly made. All but one of the submissions opposed the development. The key issues raised in the submissions were regarding the proposal being incompatible with the interurban break provisions of the planning scheme and the impacts on amenity and rural character. Concerns around traffic impacts as well as impacts on surrounding agricultural uses were also raised. On the 14th of March 2025, Council received a petition with 500 signatories opposing the development. The slide shows the location of each submitter in proximity to the site, with the red dots being those opposed and the green dot being in support. In response to submissions, the applicant made a number of changes to the development application on November 2025. These included removal of the function facility and food and drink outlet land uses, which means that all amenities and ancillary uses are to be used by the tourist park guests only. Removal of the timber mill, removal of the viewing platform structure, reduction of amenities buildings, a reduction of on-site car parking from 75 to 25, relocation of the driveway access point further west along Roberts Street, further away from the residents along Youngs Road, and partial construction of Roberts Street. The proposal now only involves a tourist park use, which features 8 cabins and 12 camping sites, with amenities buildings and ancillary facilities for guests only. The strategic framework map identifies the site as being located within the regional interurban break and being adjacent to the scenic route, which is the North Coast Railway line. The proposal addresses these provisions through a combination of built form treatments and landscape treatments to visually screen and soften the built form. This includes the provision of a 10-metre wide landscape buffer between the future railway resumption boundary and the proposed development, as well as landscape buffering to all front and side boundaries. In addition, water rehabilitation would be required to the existing dam, which would further enhance the scenic amenity of the area. Based on these mitigating features, the proposal would maintain a low-rise, low-intensity built form that incorporates significant green space with large setbacks to all boundaries and would be consistent with the requirements of the interurban break and scenic amenity provisions. Another key consideration in the assessment were the impacts on views and rural character. These elevations are of the central office camp kitchen and a typical cabin. The proposed building materials and external finishes are compatible with the visual character and the landscape setting of the area, being generally of a timber and tin materials and of an elevated lightweight construction. It's considered the proposal would not have adverse impacts on views or rural character, noting that the proposed landscape buffers to all boundaries, coupled with sensitive and low-rise design and generous setbacks to adjoining boundaries. Amenity and environmental impacts were also key matters for assessment. The development proposes dispersed buildings that are set back generally 200 metres from the existing residential properties to the east along Youngs Road. Landscape buffering is also proposed between these properties. In the event of an approval, recommended conditions to protect local amenity would include having a permanent on-site manager, guest-only access, restricting all facilities and activities to registered guests, developing an operational management plan to minimise external impacts, restricted delivery hours, acoustic limitations, and providing a noise complaints management procedure. When it comes to traffic and access, targeted upgrades are recommended to ensure local roads safely handle the proposal's impacts. Specifically, these conditions require sealing Roberts Street, upgrading the Roberts Street and Youngs Road intersection, and widening Youngs Road to the east so two-way traffic can pass safely. The proposed development complies with the requirements of the planning scheme and is recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Alderson. Councillors can have a mover. Councillor Broderick, a seconder. Councillor Dixon. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the team, and thank you for those who've joined us in the gallery today. This has been a really difficult DA for us in Glasshouse as we come to grips with everything that is happening in Glasshouse country right now, and this is another one of those things, and it's also another one of those things where we talk about the integrity of our interurban break. So there's been a lot of backwards and forwards, so I wanted to thank all the residents who've been involved in providing consistent, professional and well-researched feedback that has ultimately led to a reduction in the original development application itself, and beyond that has had direct impact and influence on the conditions that have been brought to us today as well. And I know the team has worked really hard to do that. So just wanted to start with lots of questions, actually, if that's okay. So we've spoken about the 115 submissions that have coming in and the petition that has been put forward by 500. Have you had any feedback from the submitters following the new proposal? And what did that look like?
Through the chair, yes, there has been a handful, I would say maybe 5 or 6 people remaining concerned with the proposal, raising concerns mostly around rural amenity, of the proposal's impact on their rural amenity, even with the amended proposal.
Yep. And in answering those concerns regarding amenity and dust and noise specifically, are you confident that we've been able to mitigate that as far as the conditions go, and how have we been able to do that?
Yeah, through the chair. With regards to dust, so there will be, with the conditions of approval, requiring full sealing of Roberts Street. So there will be a continuous sealed road connecting the development. So that will, and also internally within the site will be a sealed driveway. That driveway moving further west was significant in improving amenity to the residents. So there's now 150 metre separation between the internal driveway access point and the existing residents to the east. So we feel that with those things, that has addressed the dust aspect. There's a number of amenity requirements on the applicant to comply with, as touched on the operational management plan, having a permanent on-site manager to ensure compliance with that plan, noise requirements, delivery requirements. So there are recommended to be ongoing requirements on the developer to ensure that the amenity is maintained as much as possible.
Yeah. And just in regards to that compliance, how is it that compliance is then implemented and actioned? What does that look like?
Through the chair. So there will be a number of, if approved, a number of conditions imposed. Those conditions run with the land, and the applicant is obliged to comply with those conditions under the Planning Act. If there was non-compliance with those conditions and complaints were made, our compliance team would be investigating those and would follow up with the applicant, and there are potentials for fines if there are non-compliances or ongoing non-compliances. So that's generally there's a compliance process there for the...
Yeah. And just following on from that, one of the other significant concerns that we have is if this DA is approved today, that then there's the ongoing, well, we've started now, let's just keep going. And, is there potential for that, and how is that mitigated?
Through the chair, I guess the first thing is we'll put a condition saying that all ancillary uses on the site are to be for guests only, so there should be no general public accessing the site. So that's one aspect. If they are wanting to do new or different land uses above a tourist park land use, that would be a separate new application to council. Would be impact accessible for a function facility or food and drink outlet as was proposed previously. And there would be another opportunity for people to make submissions and potentially a decision at council.
Yeah. So just confirming, if there's any changes at all that they want to make to this particular development application, then they will need to apply for that again. Is that what you're saying?
Through the chair, if there's a new land use being proposed or any changes to the conditions that are recommended, that would be a new application to council.
Yeah, okay. Noise impacts we've spoken about as well. It's one of the biggest concerns. And now that the trees have also been cleared as a result of B2N, and we're already hearing that there's, increased volumes through that area, how are we planning on mitigating that? Sorry, I've got you under the pump.
No, thank you. Through the chair. So there's a number of acoustic conditions being recommended on the development, including ensuring that all equipment and plant equipment is maintained at a certain acoustic level. The operational management plan, we feel there'll be a number of mitigating measures through that to ensure that there's no loud parties or those sorts of activities occurring on the site. A noise complaint management procedure has been conditioned. There's also a requirement there for council to require a noise impact assessment if there is ongoing regular complaints being made in the future. So we feel that with the conditions in place, in addition with the separation of the development and the landscape buffering being proposed, that those mitigating features would achieve an acceptable level of rural amenity.
Okay. You've spoken and you've mentioned a couple of times about the operational plan. How is that assessed and how is it deemed appropriate? So is that, something that the developer brings back and you go through with him? What does that look like and what does that process look like?
Thank you. Through the chair. I'll step through the conditions. So there's a number of requirements that they need to meet when providing the operational plan, which is to be prepared subsequent to this application and will be submitted for our review.
Okay.
And they're to limit the use of outdoor activity areas. They're to include no-go zones for environmentally sensitive areas. They're supposed to prohibit the use of fireworks and lasers and loud music and those sorts of activities. Portable generators are to be prohibited, and also ensuring that patrons and campers using the site are notified that they're to conduct activities in a way that doesn't impact surrounding residents. So those things are stepped out in the conditions, which we'll get an opportunity to review.
Yeah, okay, thank you. One of the things that we haven't touched on, we mentioned it but didn't talk about what conditions for lighting have been proposed, because there's concern that additional lighting in that area is going to be a concern as well.
Through the chair, there is a condition requiring that they meet lighting standards, and specifically rural, it refers to a rural type of lighting, so it's supposed to be very low-key, shielded lighting directed away from adjoining residents. So condition 54 specifically requires they meet an Australian standard of lighting for control of obtrusive effects of outdoor lighting. So again, that'll be something that can be reviewed at the subsequent operational work stages.
Okay, and ensured. Some of the other concern I just alluded to before, just because there's a lot going on in Glasshouse at the moment. So the concern is with the B2N and other proposed DAs in our Glasshouse area, that will increase pressure on the Glasshouse village itself, particularly in relation to the single lane bridge and the impact to amenity environment. So how have we been able to consider that, or can we consider that in this application, in this DA? How does that all work together?
Thank you. Through the chair, there's so we have considered from a traffic point of view the proposal's impacts on the external road network, acknowledging there are a lot of developments happening within Glasshouse Mountains, but this development, we have imposed a number of conditions we feel will upgrade the external road network relative to the impacts of the proposal. Yep. So they include the sealing of Roberts Street, upgrading the intersection of Youngs Road and Roberts Street, widening Youngs Road and locations to ensure two-way traffic passes. So we feel with those upgrade requirements, they meet the parking access code requirements of the planning scheme.
Okay. Sorry, there's a lot to go through because we've had lots of feedback. Just wondering where to go next. So thank you, John, for all that you've done. Just in relation to when we're talking about traffic and upgrading those roads and the intersection itself, some of the other concerns are that, should a wrong turn be taken into Youngs Road itself instead of heading straight into Roberts Street, there's no facility down Youngs Road in order for those caravans to turn around and come back without entering other people's properties or causing concern around the road network itself. Is there potential for, is there signage that can be conditioned so that we ensure that people are taking the right pathway? And is that something that we can add in? Is that an easy add? And, is it possible even to have signage that says local traffic only, even at the entry of Youngs Road itself? Are they things that we can consider?
Through the chair, we would hope with the upgrade of the intersection it would become more obvious for people to travel, and also when people making the bookings that they are advised of the appropriate way to enter the site and not take wrong turns. Through the operational works process, traffic signage is definitely something that can be considered to minimise impacts on any wrong turn manoeuvres. Absolutely, that can be. There are some general traffic conditions here, nothing specific around putting a sign, but that is absolutely an opportunity for that to be further fleshed out through our engineering team when that comes in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I've asked enough now. I might open it up to my colleagues and then come back if that's okay.
Thank you. So you're reserving your right to speak for later. Okay, thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, and through the chair, just a question first, Madam Mayor. Mr Alderson, the report as part of the detailed assessment report, it actually refers to the Sunshine Coast Destination Tourism Plan, and one of the descriptions here is around increasing the proportion of visitor expenditure in the hinterland from 22% to 30% of total visitor expenditure. Now, just looking at Visit Sunshine Coast's figures in regards to what tourism in terms of brings to our region, over $4 billion, hinterland expenditure is around $400 million. So you're looking at an 8% increase, roughly another $32 million, and also take into consideration that tourism plan does need updating. So how do we see the increase in regards to our tourism plan, because this is a change of use in this area, and I'd imagine that we may see other applications come on the basis of this approval as well.
Through the chair, I might invite my Director, Deborah, to come up and talk to that one.
Thank you. Ms Robinson will come to address the economic and tourism aspect of the question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, thank you for the question, Councillor Landsberg. Obviously, we are seeing an increase in applications for particularly around tourist parks and these types of accommodations in rural areas. In terms of the Visit Sunshine Coast work that they have done, they are proposing to showcase both coastal and hinterland areas for visitors to the Sunshine Coast. Research shows that in terms of VSC and the work that they are doing, that they firstly, in the first instance, they put the coastal strips to visitors coming to the region, but more importantly, more recently, they've been actually advertising more the hinterland opportunities that are coming to the region as well. This includes boutique accommodation through the hinterland, also wellness offerings. There's a lot of wellness offerings being offered through the hinterland, and food and drink and agri-tourism opportunities as well that we are seeing coming. There are other experiences being developed within the hinterland also, which include having greater accommodation options, and obviously this application speaks to that, and support the projected increase in expenditure from these types of offerings to the hinterland. A good example is the Queensland Sunshine Pantry, which initiative has boosted a visitor understanding of the food and drink experiences actually in the hinterland area. And we're extending this into the wellness offering. Projects like the Big Pineapple that has just secured $5 million in grant funding are examples of enablers for this. Just in terms of, I suppose, who is coming to experience these hinterland opportunities, we're still finding that the drive market is predominantly the main source of visitation for the region as a whole, but predominantly from Brisbane, but also within the 3-hour radius of the Sunshine Coast of the people that are coming. So there's no doubt that we are seeing an increase in these types of applications for tourism in these types of sectors.
Thank you. And actually, I really appreciate the detail behind that explanation, and obviously goes to prove that assessments like this that come to council are so rigorously investigated. And I'd like to speak to, obviously, the officer's recommendation as well, Madam Mayor. I just want to obviously share that my support for the divisional councillor, obviously Councillor Jenny getting up here and obviously moving this recommendation, considering obviously community sentiment towards this application, but it has been reduced in scale considerably. The report is very detailed in regards to setback improvements, acoustic noise levels, which are questions that we'd had raised previously, and obviously with the changes of of land use that we see in these rural settings. I will be supporting the officer's recommendation, but I just want to thank, obviously, the explanation from, obviously, our Head of Economic Development as well, where these changes for our region, especially the wedding industry, is a massive part of an economic driver for our region. People love coming to our region and experiencing everything that we have in the hinterland. And it's so important that we continue to look at opportunities like this in regards to different types of land use. I know there's lots of sensitivities around accessibility and traffic control, and making sure that these uses are respectfully done by, obviously, an on-site manager, which will be as well, I believe, as part of the report. So I look forward to hearing from my fellow councillors, and thank you, Councillor Jenny.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Dixon.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councillor Broderick's actually taken most of what I wanted to say and ask, and I genuinely appreciate that, because I think there's nothing better than having a divisional councillor get up and speak to some of these planning and DA matters. In fact, I think the divisional councillor always has more knowledge and detail about things happening in their own backyard, and I really appreciate that. But I'd also make the point that this is a significantly different application, and in fact, when it was first lodged, I had a lot of concerns, and not only did I see the feedback from the community, but there was a follow-up petition as well. You know, I thought, okay, there's a bit of an issue in the community about the application, but when the follow-up petition came through, I definitely saw the issue from the community. As Councillor Landsberg has just talked about, we've got significant conditions on this development, and it's significantly changed to the point where we talked about guests only. No general members of the community will just be walking into this development anymore, and I think that is a significant shift. We heard about the possibility for the future. This thing doesn't just evolve on its own. The applicant, the people, the landowners, consultants will need to lodge subsequent applications. This is not just an automatic approval for the future. This is about what people can do right here, now, in this point in time. And like anybody else, if you want to do more than what you've got, you have to apply to council. But I think the beauty in this aspect is that residents are already aware. They're going to be watching what happens on this site. If they see an application, they'll be on Development Eye, I'm sure, as they already have, looking for what's being applied for. So the community awareness is certainly there. I made a point earlier that I think was already covered, but this is low-scale, rural-based tourism. And, you know, what better proposal could you have for a local township like this? Too often do I hear from the community that they don't want to see high density, they don't want to see the medium density in their rural townships. I think this is a significant way away from that type of development. In fact, this is more sympathetic to the local landscape. And let it be taken on the record that these townships are suffering a lot of pressure now with major infrastructure upgrades, and don't think for a second that other councillors in the region aren't hearing about it. You know, I actually see the community boards from Councillor Jenny's area. I see the concern that people put up around the fabric of their townships changing, whether that's the local co-op or tree clearing along the rail line. People are exposed and they're very, very sensitive to that. In closing, I would say that I think council's being very sympathetic. In fact, I know how this process works, and I can guarantee that our council staff and probably the local councillor have been involved working with the applicant, trying to walk them back down a little bit to see what is more sympathetic, what can be delivered, and ultimately what can be recommended for approval here today. So just acknowledge the good work of the local councillor, which always helps, but more so than that, the hard work of the council staff. Too often do we hear from developers that, oh, it can be difficult to work with council. Well, let this be an example that if you work with the council staff, you are prepared to follow the playing scheme, chances are you're going to get a recommended approval.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, just follow three more questions before I speak, if that's okay. One is, Councillor Landsberg has just spoken about MCUs, particularly for our rural areas, and what triggers an MCU. Could you let us know about this particular development application? Because it's in a rural zone, what has triggered the MCU as opposed to what's an allowable code accessible use?
Thank you. Through the chair. So the tourist park use is a potentially consistent use in a rural zone. The actual trigger is interesting. It's because of if there was just simply 8 cabins, it would be a code assessable use. It's the combination of camping and cabins has elevated the level of assessment to impact.
Yep.
And in fact, there's the code for tourism, the Rural Tourism Code allows for up to 100 campsites on a site. So there is potential for additional campsites on this thing, but they've kept it at 12.
Yep. So it's the combination of the camping and the cabins that have caused this to be an impact accessible MC. Yep. Okay. So can you clarify then whether this low-scale agritourism development, what we're calling, as conditioned, is considered consistent in maintaining the intended function of the northern interurban break? Is this a consistent use for that area?
Through the Chair, so there's a number of requirements in our planning scheme regarding the northern interurban break, and it's generally around maintaining things being low-key, rural in nature, and being set within landscape grounds. So we feel that the dispersed nature of the development has done that. There's significant setbacks to roads, to the adjoining properties have all achieved, and landscaping to all boundaries, including the scenic amenity identified route of the North Coast Railway line with a 10-metre buffer, have achieved a low-key, low-scale, and something that won't be visually obtrusive in the landscape, and that's how it's met the northern interurban break and the scenic route provisions.
Okay, thank you. I might speak to the motion now, Madam Mayor, if that's okay. This has been a difficult one for us as we've been going backwards and forwards and acknowledging the needs and the desires of our community as well, and like we said, all of the changes that are going on around us. So before I speak to the planning aspects, which is what we're falling back on today, I just want to acknowledge our residents who are here and those who have taken time to make submissions. And I understand that many of us, this is not just a development application, this is their home, your environment and your day-to-day living and amenity that could potentially be affected. I want you to know that your concerns have been taken seriously and that I have spent a lot of time listening, asking questions and carefully considering what has been raised. We are incredibly fortunate to live in such a beautiful part of the world, and I completely share the view that we must do everything reasonable, as the rest of our council does, to ensure the protection of our northern interurban break and its integrity and the rural character. At the same time, as a councillor, I have responsibility to consider applications against the planning scheme and the framework that these guys have been working on that guides how our land can be used. I've also spoken with many of the community who support the need to provide opportunity for agritourism in the region that we've spoken about today, and the pressure on us to provide places for camping, caravanning and tourism accommodation throughout the hinterland. The development proposal before us today is not the same as what was originally put forward. It's significantly reduced in scale, removal of the function facility, food and drink outlet, and the more intensive elements. And can I say that is in direct relation to the community concerns and feedback. This community input has also had significant effect into how these conditions have been crafted for today's proposal, and a huge thank you to the community for their work, time and professionalism for that. What remains is a smaller scale tourist park, and importantly, this type of use is identified within our planning scheme as something that can be considered within the rural zone, subject to the impacts being appropriately managed, complied with, and compliance actioned when necessary. The key question for me has been whether those impacts, particularly around traffic, noise, amenity and environmental operations, as we've discussed today, we're assured that these impacts can potentially be managed to an acceptable level. However, it's essential that compliance is both monitored and enforced. I'll be watching too. The other concern that's been addressed here today is the fear of the development being able to grow because we are seeing that around us as well, to an unacceptable level once it's started. Our officers today have confirmed that no further development will be allowed to take place on this property without the new development applications being submitted, if that were to be the case. There have been measures put in place for improved road access through required upgrades and sealing, to limit the noise through strict operational controls and an operational project that has to come through, to manage lighting and rural standards, and to provide separation and screening to protect neighbouring amenity. Another concern that's also been addressed is the requirement of the on-site caretaker at all times, which provides a level of oversight and accountability for how the site operates. It was mentioned to me this morning that the best managed tourist parks are those who have on-site managers. That said, I do want to acknowledge that conditions and plans don't always remove all concern. We still have some things outstanding, particularly when it comes to things like traffic movements, pedestrian safety and the general feel of the place. Those concerns are real and they have been clearly expressed and heard. And like we said, with the addition of additional signage and the traffic and all of those things, we will help control that. I also hear the broader concern around protecting the interurban break, which is something I strongly support, like we said, and as a council we will continue to advocate for both in this planning scheme and the one to come. Madam Mayor, you're looking at me like there's a tie.
No, Councillor Broderick, I'm listening, yes.
Yeah. Ultimately, I do need to make a decision based on the planning framework, and I have to fall back on the planning scheme for our region because that's what we have in place. And within that framework, this proposal, as amended and conditioned, is a low-scale managed use that can operate within acceptable limits, and that all the development applications have to be assessed on their own merit. However, I will also be seeking that Council continue to monitor safety outcomes in the area, and I strongly support the inclusion of appropriate signage and local measures to help reinforce safe driving behaviour, including directional signage, local traffic only signage, and to remove the risk of visitors turning in wrong streets and ending up at neighbouring properties. This has not been an easy decision and it hasn't rested lightly, and I genuinely respect that not everyone will agree with the outcome, but based on the information before me, I have to support this recommendation today and based on our planning scheme. So thank you to the officers for their work, most importantly for our community, for all of, I genuinely haven't seen this many conditions placed on a DA on a rural zone ever, and it's all because of the community and feedback that we've been given. So thank you. I'll leave this with you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Broderick has closed, so I'll now put the motion to the vote. Councillor Natoli, that was the process before, so thank you. So I will put the motion. Councillor.
I thought that Councillor Broderick asked questions, then has spoken to the motion. I wasn't aware that she was actually closing the debate, but that's fine.
Okay. I did discuss with Megan whether that had happened because she had introductory remarks, then went to questions, and then everyone had an opportunity to speak. I'm prepared to allow it. I'm prepared to allow it. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, in 18 years of local government, I have come across a number of difficult applications that I've had to deal with and the community's concerns about the impact of those developments, and congratulate Councillor Broderick. Your first term, obviously challenging when you come up with something quite significant. The beauty about the process that we go through, especially impact assessable application, is that you do have third-party appeal rights. You have the opportunity to be able to put forward your concerns or your support for any particular development application. And it was great to see 115 people took that opportunity. 114 of them obviously were against it. We often get criticised in local government. What's the point of talking to local government? We don't listen. Here's a classic example where we've listened. We understand, and most residents often don't, you know, it's not black and white. It's not about opposing something and hoping that council will just absolutely refuse it, and that could have been one of the actions that we took. But our officers are professionals. They're given a challenge to try and deal with this. We also have mandate on top of that, you know, coming from the state government. Their tourism strategy 2045 really clearly outlines ecotourism as a major focus. And when I consider the intrinsic beauties of what we have here on the Sunshine Coast, not everyone wants to go and stay at a high-rise in Mooloolaba, or even in our caravan parks, which are busy caravan parks. That sort of lifestyle options that we offer is no different than the many different lifestyle options that we offer people who live here. Every community that we have on the Sunshine Coast is different, intrinsically different, and we want to value those. And I think the work that the local councillor and the officers have done understands that whatever development comes into a particular area, it's focused about those livable outcomes. And often I've seen in my 18 years that fear that the community have had about particular development applications. We've gone through a similar situation as what Councillor Broderick did. We've redefined the application, ended up approving something, and the fears have sort of disappeared. I hope that they will be a great neighbour. I hope that they will contribute to the local community. I know those businesses will help the local businesses, the local community there, and they can enjoy what the locals enjoy. And often what we find is people do come and visit, they actually, in many cases, want to come back and live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. I'll just check, are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this motion? No. Councillor Broderick, do you feel you've closed? You have, thank you. I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, team. And we will now take this opportunity to break for morning tea, and we will return at 11:15. Thank you. Okay, thank you and welcome back as we continue, and we welcome Ms Burt to present 8.3, which is the active transport plan. Eagerly awaited, this one, so thank you.
Good morning, councillors and Madam Mayor. Today I'm here to present the Sunshine Coast Active Transport Plan 2026 for your consideration. Council's current active transport plan was adopted in 2011. Recognising the need to have an active transport plan that is current, relevant and responsive to today's needs, an action to update the 2011 plan was identified in Council's integrated transport strategy. To inform the active transport plan 2026, it has been important to clearly define active transport, and that means moving from place to place using physical activity, by walking, which can include pushing a pram, using a cane for assistance, riding, which may involve using a bicycle, scooter or legal e-bike, and rolling, which may include using a wheelchair or mobility scooter. It is important to recognise that users of personal mobility devices, such as e-scooters, will travel along the active transport network. However, they are not considered a form of active transport. The plan has been informed by our community's needs, and through early engagement activities, our community shared that increasing connectivity, removing barriers to inclusivity, and valuing the needs of all path users was essential to support more people to use active transport. We also learnt that many of our respondents ride for recreational purposes, but are yet to ride for transport purposes. The plan has been informed by an understanding of the state of the walking and riding networks, where we recognised that established residential areas have fewer paths, while wider paths and separated cycle tracks are predominantly located in emerging communities. Global, national, state
and local strategies and policies have also guided and provided a policy framework for the plan. And importantly, acknowledging the growth here on the Sunshine Coast and the major projects and events proposed for the region have demonstrated a clear need for an inclusive and accessible active transport network that provides connectivity to the Wave and other public transport stops and stations, and to Brisbane 2030 Olympic and Paralympic Games venues. Bringing all of this information together, the vision for the plan is to create a livable, healthy, safe and connected Sunshine Coast by making walking, riding and rolling an easy choice for everyday trips. The vision is underpinned by 4 guiding objectives that provide the foundation for identifying, developing and implementing actions. And these include equitable access for all, which ensures that we are providing a safe, inclusive and accessible active transport network for all ages, all genders and all abilities. Livable and sustainable, where the plan supports preserving our lifestyle and amenity as change occurs while creating healthier communities. Vibrant and attractive places, supporting the creation of places where people want to spend time, supporting centres to thrive and connecting people to nature and cultural heritage along key routes. And creating change, with the plan supporting the Sunshine Coast to become a place where safety and active transport is the norm. To deliver this vision, the 3 priority areas for action include networks and infrastructure. These actions provide a primary layer of improvements to the network and increase connectivity. Actions in this priority area will target, for example, better local connections while expanding the network, safer crossings and streets, and supporting connectivity to public transport. The second priority area is supporting activities. These actions provide a secondary layer of supportive improvements through shade, end-of-trip facilities and safety improvements which can make active transport an easy choice that feels pleasant, safe and enjoyable for our users. Action in this priority area will include prioritising safety improvements through improved lighting or proactive maintenance, complementary facilities such as end-of-trip bike racks and storage, and seating to rest along the way, First Nations heritage storytelling, and shading through greening of the networks. And the last priority area is to promote, influence, and encourage. The third layer of actions is to ensure there is a focused effort on encouraging and influencing people to walk, ride and roll more through promotional activities, support for travel behaviour programs, and improving tools to make active transport information readily and easily available. Across these priority areas, a total of 54 actions have been identified for delivery across the next 10 years. To support the vision for active transport, aspirational walking and riding network mapping is included in the plan. These maps show both existing and planned network information and identify where future networks may be delivered through a one network approach involving council, the state and private development. The divisional mapping shows a clear intent to improve local active transport networks and connect people to public transport stops and stations, schools, activity centres and essential community facilities. The plan is not intended to identify a schedule of works for delivery of the planned network. However, the plan gives a good head of power to prioritise links for delivery and the evidence of support for grant applications. Key priority actions identified for delivery in this plan include connectivity to public transport, stops and stations, the Wave, as well as schools, shops and other essential services and facilities, connectivity to Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games venues, supporting our most vulnerable pedestrians, notably our children, elderly and the vision and mobility impaired, continuing to deliver the Ride Score Active Schools program, enabling and supporting behaviour change after the delivery of infrastructure, and seeking best practice outcomes in new development. The delivery of these works will be funded through available budgets within the Capital Works program, Local Government Infrastructure Plan and the Transport Levy. External grants and funding programs will also be leveraged to maximise council's budgets. And private development will also have a role to play, with council negotiating with developers to ensure best practice active transport outcomes can be achieved through these applications. And it is proposed that the plan be reviewed after 5 years. The plan has been informed by 2 phases of broad community engagement. During phase 1, we gathered an understanding of our community's local active travel preferences, values and barriers to using active transport. This information helped to shape the plan. During phase 2, we shared the draft active transport plan and asked our community, have we got it right? Do the proposed actions align with the community's priorities, and sought feedback on the draft aspirational active transport network mapping. Targeted stakeholder engagement was also undertaken to confirm that what we heard from the community aligned with the community and business groups, as well as community-based advocacy groups. Today, it is recommended that Council endorse the Sunshine Coast Active Transport Plan 2026.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon as the mover, and seconder, Councillor Burns. Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the great presentation, and this is something I can personally be very excited about, and I'll tell you why. I was actually a bit of a critic around public transport and the transport levy and these active PT projects and programs because I didn't see anything real, but a lot has changed in recent times. And I think we know that because the region is growing fast. We're seeing a lot of change in our region right now. We're seeing changes through new developments, infill development. In fact, we're seeing improvements in and around our rural residential areas as well and rural hinterland. We're seeing a lot of projects pop up, and with that, infrastructure comes with it. But Yolanda also talked about the 2032 Olympics. We know we've got the WAVE project locked in from the state government. A lot has changed. And I remember, in fact, endorsing this plan back in 2011. It was pretty ambitious then. But the rubber's hit the road and we're actually delivering on the ground. And if you think about some of those examples, the Vulnerable Persons Program, you think about this term alone, what that's shown residents in the region about what we can achieve. I think that plays into this strategy significantly. But the reality is, if we don't look at changing how we're going and how we're doing, we're going to lock in just road upgrades and traffic. Realistically, that's all we're going to do. If I hear it all the time, it's traffic. I'm sick of being stuck in traffic. We also don't like that new roads are having to be built because they take away the local, I'd say the local feel. You look at Mountain Creek right now, you drive through Mountain Creek and the arrival to Mountain Creek, significantly different. In fact, people say, welcome to Radiator Springs. That's what they say, and it's a Cars reference. There's been clearing of habitat and vegetation. People don't always appreciate the changes that need to be made, but if you can convince them that there's changes that can be positively taken in the community around active transport, and that's about pedestrian crossings, wombat crossings, better bikeways, new bridges, links to get over the Sunshine Motorway at Buderim. I think the rubber's hit the road, and this council has done a fantastic job since that strategy was endorsed in 2011. Right now, I'm seeing more positive wins on the ground for this council, and too easy is it to sit back and say it's all too hard, nothing will happen. Well, look at the real examples in your own backyards, councillors. Look at the real examples, the tangibles that you can show people. Right now, we know that too many of our trips are they're under that 5 kilometre. I know in the plan it talks about that 5 kilometre geography and community travel. We know that a lot of people want to travel local, and what does that mean? Well, we have to put in the raised pedestrian crossings. We need to upgrade the footpaths. We need the ride score. We need the ride to school programs. That's how we get people out of their car, and I see it every day. The amount of young people now riding, and I've seen them on their push bikes now. There seems to be a bit of a push towards push bikes. The young people are getting out there and they're riding to school, which means that's a less car off the road. And that's exactly where we want to get. But the reality is, unless we start to take this seriously and have a plan in place, nothing changes. And the key for me is the plan. The plan's a good plan. 142 pages in this agenda document right now. If you look into it, I learn a lot through it. I've been through nearly 20 years in council. I've met with staff. I've heard from advocacy groups. Yet I still learnt something in the report that I didn't know. And I went, wow, I really wish the community would turn up and fill the chamber and learn about the things that we want to do in the future and learn about the projects that we want to happen and see happen in our local area. For me, this is something that I can buy into, and you can tell through the enthusiasm. We're going to need this, because if we don't, Madam Mayor, we've got no plan to succeed. What was really important for me in reading the document is actually seeing the buy-in that we've had. It's not just about the individual submissions from locals. It's not just about going through every divisional map that's in the program and outlining where the shortfalls are, but it's about all those advocacy groups. And if you look in the document, you'll see that there's at least 20 plus that we've engaged with in the region that have bought into the program and into the active transport travel plan. I'll let my other colleagues speak to this, but I'm excited because I know there's tangibles, there's things we will deliver. And from my point of view, it's not also just about what council can do. Too often do I talk about what we're doing, because we're doing a lot, but we realistically need the buy-in from our state and federal colleagues. And if there's one thing I've learnt, they're not going to buy in unless they see a plan. And they're going to need that advocacy document. This is exactly what it is. And we've done all that work for all the other levels of government that can say, you know what, Sunshine Coast Council is ready to go. We know what their projects are. We know what their programs are. What money can we offer them to just get the job done? I'm not going to name individuals in the organisation, but may I just share with the CEO my sheer excitement and support for the way that this organisation has changed, particularly in the last 4 years of note, in and around the way that we take residents' concerns seriously, raised pedestrian crossings, unsafe intersections, upgrading traffic lights, new footpath connections, working with people with disability. Something has changed in that space, and for that I'm very grateful and thankful. And in fact, being a councillor in a local community like Palmview, where it's a significant growth corridor, and we've got all these brand new footpaths and accessibility points, you know, there's still things that we miss. And we are going back to work on some of those projects, and to see the local community buy in and be so thankful for those upgrades, more than the huge $1 million projects, they're thankful that their kids can safely get to school. And for me, that makes the job worthwhile. I would commend this plan to you, and I hope you all, when you do speak, can take something out of this that you support, because I support it all.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Your enthusiasm is infectious. Fantastic. Councillor Burns, there's a challenge for you.
I'm going to speak very deadpan. Madam Mayor, just a question to start with. Thanks, Ms Burt, for the presentation. I just noticed when reading through the plan, so just a few little funny things. So firstly, just clarifying, this hasn't been through graphic design yet, so it's not in its final format for that'll be put up on the website, is that correct?
With the Chair, that is correct. It's going through
great.
graphic design at the moment.
Yeah, beautiful. And then, so just as part of that, on page 29 of the actual plan, or it's 175 in the pack, there is a graph there outlining the various strategies within council and about how the active transport plan aligns with those and sits under them. I'd just note that it is a new form of a diagram that we're looking to use, and there is a comment under that that talks to the youth plan, of which I think it's been borrowed from. So before it gets finalised through graphic design, can we just please see that that's amended appropriately?
The Chair, yes, that will be amended.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Notwithstanding that small little thing, and it is a large plan, as Councillor Dixon has outlined, so appreciate that there will be those little bits and pieces. But I'm really encouraged by this plan. I think what I'm really encouraged about is we can see through this plan that we're implementing and outlining the things that we've learnt from our last number of years in terms of delivery and sometimes non-delivery of AT uplift. So we're seeing the improvements into the plan here. We see those, and that means things like missing links, so those simple small parts, like we really recognise that that's actually a real bang for buck element of the plan. We're also recognising where we've had really good success through things like through ride score, and recognising and hearing from parents in those schools about things that would actually support them to allow their kids to continue riding. So seeing that sort of feedback recognised in the plan, I think, is really, really good. I really appreciate that the bigger picture thing too around the broader networks and connections across the whole, considering what are those core things that we need to be connected to, those hubs, if you like, and how do we make sure that we're connecting to them. I like that the reflection around behaviour change and how do we actually support people to do this. I really appreciate the real reflection around I think there's a 30% or so of people saying that they're really interested but cautious and not sure how to do it, and they're kind of what they need to get involved. And I think you make it really clear in the plan that actually our best efforts at a council level to increase our active transport uptake is to focus on this percentage, this group of people who go, I would really like to do this, but I just require these sorts of supports to make that happen. I think that's a really wise way for us to go ahead. We have our passionate cyclists, walkers, rollers already. And so how do we support other people to bring the uptake? And that's a really achievable piece. So I just find that there's a lot of balance across it, that it actually has taken into consideration our learnings, but even more to the point that it's been really obviously considered in terms of the engagement and consultation to date. We know that this is something we'll always improve on, and we haven't necessarily done it fantastically always to date, particularly when it comes to AT. But I think in this plan we see a real clear evidence that we want to actually improve that, and we're taking active measures to improve it. So that's really encouraging to me. And in terms of the ride score, every councillor around this chamber loves ride score, and the reason they love it is because it sees really obvious, tangible outcomes in regards to AT. Even in the 14 days, there was 14 days when Curramundi State School first launched earlier this year. So within the 14 available days to ride to school, the number of students and the number of trips and the kilometres raised from that 14 days of the program being in place would have seen a travel from Brisbane, the sunny coast, to south of Wollongong. It's an exceptional outcome, like 1,100 kilometres of transport done on a bike or a scooter or walking that would have otherwise been done by a car. So I think the more we can see those sorts of opportunities be rolled out, the better. But I think equally, I always am wondering, what does it look like to inspire adults to do that? So this provides incentive, and I think equally, our continual reliance on vehicles provides a disincentive. And so we need both. We need both push and pull factors to see the stuff change. So if you're sitting in traffic and you don't like traffic, guess what? You're part of it and you're part of the problem. So I would suggest changing. Reconsider how you can get around the next 2, 3, 4, 5K from your house, and you will actually be part of the solution and not just sitting in the traffic, and you'll have lovely hair like mine and just have glowing skin. So I do thoroughly endorse this plan, and thank you and the team for all the work that you put into it.
Thanks, Councillor Burns. Not sure of the evidence on the skincare advice, but thank you. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I've just got just one quick question before I start. Just in terms of the accessibility of the viewing of the maps, of the walking and riding maps, will they be presented online in a way that the community will be able to view them in detail?
Through the chair, yes, that is a great question. The limitation of presenting the mapping within this document through this system has required us to decrease their quality, essentially. But when these maps are online, they will be high quality resolution mapping.
Yeah, thank you, Yolanda. I appreciate that. Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll just quickly speak to the report. Well, firstly, I just want to say Councillor Dixon has officially entered old man territory because he referred to young people. And I really do appreciate with the report the focus not just on the growth areas, because often the growth areas have a lot of that infrastructure delivered with their development, and a lot of the older communities who never had that parameter set around them when they were being developed have missed out. So I really appreciate the balance between the growth areas and the existing areas, and I know that the communities that live in those regions will appreciate having that focus as well. I'd also like to give a shout out to the communities who did provide input into the plan. I know I have a number of groups in my division who are very active transport focused. So yeah, I appreciate all stakeholders who contributed to the plan, and I think it's a really good one, and I'm excited to see some of the outcomes that will be delivered because of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think this plan is a fantastic piece of work, and it's a culmination of many years, actually, of work that's been done by our officers. So I want to start by saying thank you, and also saying thank you to Councillor Dixon and Burns, particularly for your advocacy in this space. And I know Councillor Law, I'm sure, will make a contribution a little bit later on. But I did want to reflect on where we have gone in this term of council in terms of investment in active transport, and why having this document is really important, because it actually gives us a head of power to tie that work in together. So bear with me, because I'm going to read a list of pathways that we've renewed and created in Division 8 in the last 2 years. So Main Road, Maroochydore, Ridge Road, Maroochydore, Arwen Street, Maroochydore, Wattlebird Drive, north and south in Twin Waters was rehabilitated. Bimini Drive, Menzies Drive in Pacific Paradise, Genure Street, Yurumba, Green Oaks Drive, Coolum Beach in both Divisions 8 and 9. Maroochy Waters Drive, Maroochydore. Pedestrian crossings. We've got shovels in the ground right now on Ocean Drive to build a new raised pedestrian crossing. We've got Sunrise Drive in Sunshine Cove building a new raised pedestrian crossing right now. And we're doing design work for Tanner Street West in Mount Coolum and Baden Powell Street in Maroochydore, which I know has been a place where residents have advocated actually directly to the Mayor around the need for a crossing. So that's a snapshot of investment in 2 years. And it is important to have a document like this that actually brings that together in a one network approach. And I think that is a really important emphasis as part of this document. And I'm particularly happy to see some of the pieces of work that we're going to be doing around the action items, particularly around advocacy to TMR, about making safer pedestrian crossings, about delivering better active transport areas on state-controlled roads. Because I'll give you the best example. We've talked a lot about Ride Store, and Pacific Paradise State Store was one of the 3 new schools that was added to Ride Store this year. And Pacific Paradise has had great participation, over 120 registrations. But the really exciting part is that 70 of those students used to go to school by car. So that's a seismic shift in the amount of kids who are actually getting to school by active transport. The challenge that we have is that council has done a lot in Pacific Paradise and is doing a lot in the surrounding suburbs to try and improve active transport outcomes. So we've reduced the speed limit out through the entire suburb of Pacific Paradise to 40 kilometres an hour to make it safer for active transport users on our roads, because we have a deficiency of pathways in places like Pacific Paradise. But for kids trying to cross the David Low Way from the southern side of Pacific Paradise to the northern side where the school is located is extremely dangerous. It is really, really harrowing to see kids going across a pedestrian refuge of that nature that really leaves them exposed. And it's what we heard directly from parents, caregivers and students when we conducted a survey before Ride Store was actually introduced around what does this actually look like in terms of a network and how can we improve it for you. So when I see our active transport plan, council is investing, as you have just heard, a significant amount in active transport outcomes on the assets and the areas that we can control. But for it to be a really great outcome, it has to be a one network approach. So I'm particularly excited to see what we're going to be able to do as a council and as an organisation to advocate to the state government and TMR in particular about how they're going to work with council to deliver these outcomes. Because another example that I do want to call out and thank the community for their feedback on is that we have an incredible coastal pathway. And I've been critical of our coastal pathway network at different times in this chamber, and I still do in certain parts. But I recognise that there are some great parts of the coastal pathway along Bradman Avenue. The problem is, For people who live in the side streets of like Yinnie Street, you know, Broadsea, Broadwater, they actually find it really challenging to get to the coastal path across Bradman Avenue because there are long stretches of road that have no safe crossings. You only have to drive down it yourself to see families with kayaks trying to get across, labradoodles, dogs, you name it. It's challenging. It's really challenging. And I've advocated to the state member and the state minister around this in terms of council's willingness to partner with the state government and TMR to deliver better pedestrian crossings on Bradman Avenue. And I think that this active transport plan is actually going to help us with a head of power to keep that advocacy going, because we know we can deliver as much as we want in terms of great outcomes on our council assets, but it's only going to work in places like Bradman Avenue and Pacific Paradise if the state government and TMR work with us as well. So I commend this plan, and I'm really excited about the work you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And to our CEO, you will listen and hear the passion and the great support for incredible programs that Council undertakes, and fantastic work, Yolanda and Nicola. You know, to be able to put this plan together is really encouraging to see that it does reflect very much the heart of what we want. I remember when I first got elected in 2020, I had residents in Division 4 in Cotton Tree, on 4th Avenue. Since 2009, wanting raised pedestrian crossing. A lot of elderly people there struggling to get across. And 2009, 11 years, and I made it a priority to be able to deliver those 2 raised pedestrian crossings on 4th Avenue. The problem was that when I inquired how much money was in the total budget for raised pedestrian crossings there's only $1,000. So what Councillor Dixon mentioned is there's been a significant quantum shift. So I really want to today highlight on this transport plan and its importance, not just strategically, but in how it's been delivered on the ground in our communities. And I want to bring that to life through a live example, the Cotton Tree Precinct. Cotton Tree is one of the Sunshine Coast's most iconic coastal areas, bordered by First Avenue, Aerodrome Road, the ocean to the east, and Moochie River to the north. It is already a highly walkable and active community, but it's also experiencing increased density and visitation, making it the ideal location to demonstrate what this plan can achieve. In Cotton Tree, we are already implementing key elements of the active transport plan. We have reduced all local street speeds to 40 kilometres per hour, and importantly lowered speeds even further to 30 kilometres an hour on 4 key roads: the Esplanade, Cotton Tree Esplanade, Alexandra Parade, and King Street. This creates safer, calmer streets where pedestrians and cyclists are prioritised. We are delivering raised pedestrian crossings, particularly in a number of the Esplanade, on the Esplanade. There were already existing, I think, 3 raised pedestrian crossings there. But over the last 5 years, delivered 2 on 4th Avenue, 6 at the intersections to 6th Avenue, reinforcing that people come first in these environments, and there are more to come. We are continuing to close gaps in the footpath network, ensuring walking is not only encouraged but practical and accessible for everyone. We understand the importance of street trees, providing essential shade during the day, and the need to improve lighting at night time to ensure safety and comfort. These are necessary components to support and encourage active transport. Importantly, Cotton Tree is not just a local destination, it's a critical link to our broader active transport network. It forms part of the coastal pathway, heavily used by both residents and visitors, connecting south to Alexandra Headlands and north across Cornwall Creek into Division 8, linking through to Dewforth Avenue. It also plays an important role in connecting the new city centre and the old city centre around where the Big Top is, With the current upgrades of First Avenue set to become an exemplar for active transport. This demonstrates how we can link key destinations and make it easier for people to move between them without relying on a car. This level of connectivity is where the true value of active transport plan lies, not just enabling short local trips, but creating a connected network across our region. In the short term, these improvements deliver immediate safety and accessibility benefits. People feel more confident walking and riding to the beach, to local shops, cafes, restaurants, and to community spaces. In the medium term, we reduce reliance on cars for short trips and easing congestion and improving how the precinct functions. Local businesses benefit from increased foot traffic and the area becomes more vibrant and inviting. And in the long term, Cotton Tree becomes a model for how to accommodate growth and increase density while preserving lifestyle. A model of how thoughtful design, lower speeds, connected pathways, shade and lighting can influence behaviour and encourage people to choose walking or riding instead of a motor vehicle. It also supports our broader goals in reducing emissions, improving health outcomes and enhancing livability across the Sunshine Coast. More importantly, it demonstrates that this plan is not theoretical. It is being delivered, and it is delivering real outcomes.
Councillor Natoli, would you like an extension of time?
Just a short extension.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Dixon, seconded Councillor Landsberg. Those in favour? Thank you, that's carried.
And as I said, it's delivering real outcomes. And importantly, all of these works will help further develop the Cotton Tree Village look and feel, strengthening its identity as a people-focused coastal destination. It adds tremendously to the lifestyle that many residents and visitors cherish about this precinct. So in closing, Madam Mayor, the Active Transport Plan 2026 provides the vision, but places like Cotton Tree show how we can turn that vision into reality. It is about safer streets. It's about connected communities. It is about protecting the lifestyle that makes the Sunshine Coast so special. And as I mentioned, since I've been elected in 2020, we've now had 13 raised pedestrian crossings across Division 4, with another 3 to be delivered that will connect the Kiwana Shopping Centre with the Kiwana Surf Club, connecting again the coastal pathway to a major hub. So I commend this report, Councillor. It's a great report, fantastic outcome. I really look forward to working and delivering the outcomes that our community really want.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I would also echo the comments we've had at the quality and the detail and the community consultation we've had for this report. It's excellent, and thank you for all that you have done, and particularly the patience of the team going through those Hinterland Division 10 maps, of trying to get them in a scale that was meaningful and usable for us so that we could identify where those key connections were. It was a challenging task, and thank you, but I think we got there. And I would like to build on the comments that we've had, and particularly around that connectivity between our centres. Because I think if we can start to make significant steps in that connectivity between the centres, then we really will make huge advances in supporting that big chunk of people who want to become enthused and who are currently interested in using active transport, particularly cycling, to get between places. And there's a comment that we've got in here that continued reliance on vehicles for our transport will certainly mean that we have more congestion and more challenges over where to leave the vehicles that we ride around in while we don't need them, i.e. car parking. And that will continue to be an ongoing problem until we are able to use this plan to take a big step forward. And there's a comment in the plan, if I may, and if we could just get slide number 4 from the presentation, please, that we want to consider our road space allocation. And I just want to highlight what that means to me, and I think what that means to a lot of people, and quite a number of comments that I'm hearing from people who are currently cycling and would like to cycle more, but they want to feel safer on our roads. So if you look at the photo here, now we're focusing on the pedestrian crossing, fantastic. But if you look beyond the crossing, you'll see about a 4 metre wide piece of road filled up with parked cars. Now that road exists today, and we're currently choosing to use it to park cars. Now what would our road network look like? Instead of choosing to park cars, we chose to make them active transport links. It would be one of the cheapest, most effective way of delivering on this plan within a very, very short time scheme of just needing to use signage, a lot of paint, and a lot of education. And the paint's for the roads, by the way, not to throw at bicycle riders. So there is a great opportunity, but it is going to require a very courageous conversation with our community about how we could do this and what it might look like. So I pose that challenge to all of us because it will be a courageous conversation. It will lean into the car parking conversation and the whole issue of where do we put our vehicles when we're not using them. Because if you think about a vehicle, it actually is inactive and unused for most of its life. It's a fact. Just think about it. So how can we activate the infrastructure that we have right now to achieve huge outcomes and progress in our active transport plan? So I leave that as a challenge and a question for all of us to consider. And we've heard about our Ride Score program. It is brilliant. There is no question about that. But I'm curious of what happens between maybe around grade 8 or 9 and then getting to grade 12, where we go from people who are really keen and want to get on their bikes and suddenly they want to be driving their car to school. That's interesting. Go around a school and look at the number of P-plates parked in the streets around any school in your area, particularly in the second half of the year. It is astonishing just how many P-plates are parked up. We need to think about these things. We need to challenge ourselves, and this active transport plan gives us that opportunity. It is really, really good where we've got to. So yes, of course, I'll be supporting this. And yes, of course, I will want to be encouraging others to use active transport more. And finishing on the additional comments to Councillor Taylor and getting across Bradman Avenue, I'll add to that challenge by getting to Bradman Avenue from the western towns. That is a mission on its own. I recognise the collaboration we've had from the state to upgrade Petrie Creek Road, and that will allow a greater section of that road with space for cycling down the side. But we are going to be left with the most challenging, dangerous part of that road between the cutting, which will hinder us and hinder people wanting to cycle or use some other form of transport to get from the western side over to Bradman Avenue and the fantastic coastal network we've got here. And of course, those pedestrian crossings will help. So, fantastic report. Thank you very much. Great plan. And I'm looking forward to those courageous conversations that will come out of this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for this exciting report. So just one question before we start. So given that we've got all of our priorities listed in here, so how does that plan work throughout all of the departments of council, given that we've got minor caps, capital works programs, VPP, all of those things? How will this influence all of those and how will it be implemented?
Through the Chair. So one way that we've tried to achieve that is actually by identifying a lead in the actions who will actually, take that action forward. We've also identified it through the structure of the organisation. The other, the other thing I would also mention is that we have a real focus on precinct planning and how we can bring it together. And the other thing I would add is that there is actually an action in there that council works together to actually consider active transport through improved project integration. So we've actually tried to identify that that is an action that across council everyone needs to be leaning into.
Thank you, and I'll keep it short, but one of the exciting things about this is we often hear about that coast and hinterland and both sides of the highway debate, but what this does is this is a whole of region plan, which is one of those things that we love. So we're talking about those connections that are both east and west, and particularly in our hinterland, we've got the north and south between the railway villages, because Division 1, as you know, is quite interesting in that one side has the most beautiful active transport plan that we've got here on the Sunshine Coast, and then we've got the other side of Division 1 that are struggling just to get from one town to the other. So what this plan helps do is bring all of that together, and we're really excited about that. So I look forward to seeing those priorities, really looking forward to seeing all of the departments working together, and particularly seeing those precinct plans so we can work on those together. So thank you to the team for all the work. Looking forward to seeing it rolled out. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Dixon, would you like to close? To close? You haven't spoke. You have spoken. Sorry, you've spoken. So yes, to close.
No, the first thing I'd take from today's debate and contribution is the fact that every councillor was positive. How exciting is it to have this brand new strategy, the buy-in from the political organisation and councillors and the community on a plan? Shouldn't that be the most exciting point about all of this, is that we're unified? And in fact, to hear the examples from councillors, I know Councillor Joe just talked about his experience, 18 years in council, finally seeing those wins in his community with raised crossings. I think that's something that's really brought a lot of buy-in from councillors. And I know I talk about the Vulnerable Persons Program a fair bit, but you've really got to take that as something that underpins what we do. Because for many people in our community, it's council showing that we can deliver when people raise concerns. The buy-in from councillors is vital, and I think staff should be very, very happy today to see that from councillors. The mapping is fantastic. I know that my division's the smallest in terms of geographical. I think it all fits on one page. It's easy to find. But with the hinterland maps, it also shows us what's missing, and I think that is very valuable too. For hinterland councillors to come to council and say, you know, we have these kilometres of missing links, which means our people aren't getting into core townships around services. They don't have a bus service. They can't safely walk on the road because they're not going to get hit by a car. They don't want to do that. They can't push prams on the road. How they connect? Well, that's work for council to do. And now that we've got that on the record, we can show that we're working towards it. One thing we talked about in the quarterly report, and I know Tim focused on this, but it's connecting the other things that are ancillary with our upgrades, and that's the shade. You know, how awesome is it now to ride down and walk down footpaths where they're shady and they're not so hot? And in fact, I was going to talk about it, but I always talk about the trees at every quarterly report. I see them pop up all the time. And in fact, I wasn't embarrassed when I heard we were running a little bit short on our delivery, because every time I'm out there, I see more pop up. I was in Councillor Taylor's division several weeks ago. I'm even noticing them in Councillor Taylor's. So they are out there. And in fact, they contribute to people getting out on their bikes, walking, scooting, rolling. One thing that may not be popular to talk about, Madam Mayor, but I actually still see a huge benefit in e-bikes, e-scooters and e-mobility. I know that like 99% of the residents out there have got a bee in their bonnet about these devices, and rightly so, because there are a group of people out there that have really set the bar high for stupidity on these devices, yeah? No helmets, doubling up, doing 80 or 90 in a 60 zone, when they should only be doing 25 on a road under 50 kilometres. That's beside the point. The point is, those devices are still needed, and if we don't create safe places for them, they're going to keep doing exactly what they've done, and that is right on the road. Councillor David gave us a great challenge, and, you know, to be fair, his argument is a compelling one. That photo where you've got cars parked on the road that could easily be transformed into an active transport corridor. In fact, we've just been through this at Mountain Creek. The broader community supported our idea, but the locals that would lose all of their on-street parking, rightly so, have got an issue with it, given traditionally for 30 years they've had access to on-street. But I'm always reminded about one thing that council did, and it must have been pretty close to this 2011 strategy. Many in the room won't remember, but Karawatha Drive from Dixon Road through to Golf Links was a 4-lane road. It had 2 traffic lanes either side. And a staff member came in and said, hey, Christian, what do you reckon if we just take one traffic lane away and turn it into an on-road cycle lane? I said, I guess we could give it a go. We did it, not one complaint. Not one complaint. We actually took the dual lanes down to one, still functions, still has capacity, and we got the on-road cycle lanes. So it can be done. It can be done. All in all, I'll leave it there. I think it's fantastic. And you can see in the room today, the council is on board. How good is that? Thank you to the staff. And I realise that the staff are the ones that have done the work. I said this document earlier is 142 pages in the agenda. They wrote the report. They did the homework. They spoke to the community, and it is them that we owe our thanks to.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Okay, councillors, I'll put that motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Johnston? Thank you, Councillor Johnston. That is carried unanimously. Thank you for that. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, team. Thank you for that and for all of that spirited debate and conversation. It was wonderful. We now move on to item 8.4 and we welcome Ms Dunbar to present the April Financial Performance Report. Welcome. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, councillors and members of the executive team. I'm here today to present Council's Financial Performance Report for April 2026. As at the 30th of April, Council's operating result is a surplus of $80.3 million, which is $15.2 million above the current year-to-date budget. This result reflects operating revenue $4.2 million higher than year-to-date budget and total operating expenses being $11.1 lower than budget. This report also includes a revised year-end operating forecast of a $12 million deficit, mainly due to higher than expected revenue and a conservative forecast of costs based on prior year spending patterns. The major revenue variances include fees and charges, which continue to be ahead of year-to-date budget by $1.2 million, holiday parks, sports venues and Venue 114 still performing well against budget, with development fees above budget due to higher than anticipated number of applications. Interest received from investments is higher by $1.1 million. Other revenue is above year-to-date budget by $2.1 million, with the major contributor being revegetation offsets. Internal quarry sales are down on budget by $1.1 million. Year-to-date operating expenditure is 11.1 below year-to-date budget, with key variances including core materials and services $7.3 million below budget, with contributing factors noted on the slide. Levy programs expenditure $1.7 million below year-to-date budget, and loss on disposal of assets continues to be above budget relating to land parcels written off following reclassification as road reserve. The total capital works program has progressed 58.8%, with $157.3 million spent year to date. The core capital works program accounts for $114.3 million of this expenditure. As at the 30th of April, Council's cash balance, excluding trust funds, is $284 million, comprising $123.2 million in unrestricted cash and $160.8 million in restricted cash. Council's total debt at the 30th of April is $413 million, with planned new borrowings for 25-26 at $66.8 million. Council currently holds 11 investments totalling $130 million, achieving a weighted average return of 4.75%. The 25-26 savings initiatives have been achieved, with the targeted vacancy rate remains on track to be achieved by the 30th of June 2026. Current risks are outlined in the report and summarised on the slide, and the recommendation today that Council receive and note the report titled April 2026 Financial Performance Report.
Thank you, Ms Dunbar. Can I have a mover for the report, Councillor Hungerford, a seconder, Councillor Broderick? Thank you, Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Madam Mayor. First time I've spoken today. Okay, to summarise, Council is tracking $15.2 million ahead of budget. Now, that result reflects a strongly stronger revenue and controlled spending. Capital expenditure is currently 5.7 million below where we forecast to be, mainly due to timing while priority works continue. So it's the timing of the payments on those works. It always lags. Our cash balance remains strong at 284 million, excluding trust funds. So this provides flexibility to manage operations and capital commitments. Having said that, key assumptions such as growth, interest rates and depreciation all affect these outcomes, which is why ongoing maintenance monitoring will remain important with May and June leading up to the end of the year to keep that financial position. So Council's debt balance is 413 million, with a relatively low average interest rate of 2.9%. Now this has resulted because we have terms between 5 and 16 years where we've borrowed in the past at a lower interest rate. But the 66 million we're going to be drawing down in June is going to be at a higher interest rate. So that will increase that average. So overall, the year-to-date result shows a stable position for where we are at the moment. And this will be important in our monitoring as we move into the final months of the financial year to ensure that deficit position does not increase. It'll put us in a stronger position going into the next year's budget. So I commend this to you, councillors. It's a fair position to be in at this point in the financial climate we're in. I commend this report to you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I just have a few questions for clarification just in the report. It was actually really pleasing to see some of the results coming in Council's favour over this last month. But just a couple of questions. In the operating result, we had a reduction in parking fees of 447,000. What was that due to? Was there something that happened this past month to have that reduction?
So through the chair, thank you for the question, councillor. So the parking fees, majority of that reduction is in relation to the Alexandra CBD. So the meters were turned off in March. So and also in the revenue in relation to Park and Go Mooloolaba, that's been impacted with the first 4 hours is free.
Thank you. The other one was just clarification about internal sales were down $1.1 million. What do those internal sales relate to? Are they quarry-related items?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. They are quarry internal sales.
Thank you. I have another question about there was a reduction in our operating expenses, which is a good thing. But two areas specifically, we had a reduction in waste of $2.6 million. What was that in relation to?
So through the chair, it's threefold. So the first one is our waste levy payments to the state are less than we had forecast, and that's due to less tonnage going across the weighbridge compared to the same time last year. Also, our materials recycling facility gate fee, that's less than we had forecast as well, and that's again due to the yellow bin tonnage that goes across the weighbridge at the MRF. And also our landfill management contract, we had forecasted that would be in place on the 1st of July, but we've only just awarded that contract in the last couple of months, so there's a savings there in relation to that.
Thank you. And then also just the reduction in electricity of 846,000. What was that attributed to?
So through the chair, so the reduction in electricity, so the sites that are major users of power have been actually using less electricity than forecast. So we always base our electricity forecast off last year's usage, and we've seen this year we've actually had a milder summer, which is obviously seeing less stress on our electricity, particularly on our HVAC systems. And also Energex service and maintenance is below budget, one because our streetlights are being replaced with LED, and also the inventory, as in when we lose the light poles. Energex have been not replacing some of the lighting poles, and that reduces our electricity, and they've done that a little bit faster than we had forecast.
Thank you. In the non-recurrent expenses, we had quite a significant loss on disposal of 12.2 million, which was the land parcels reclassified as road reserve and written off as assets. Are we doing, or is Council conducting an audit to see whether or not this type of issue is going to crop up again for us in the future?
Thank you. Ms Rudd's going to answer this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Suarez. Absolutely, we are reviewing what that means for those land parcels in relation to some of those projects, and the team have been identifying where those land parcels are needing to be reclassified as road reserve, noting that it's not a cash impact, but it is something that needs to be written off as part of the accounting standards.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. In our capital expenditure, I just noticed that the disaster recovery funding arrangements showed a significant increase from the original budget and the current budget figures, so it's not necessarily related to just this last month's report. Can you just remind me what this escalation was due to?
So through the Chair, so when we moved from original budget to current budget, the current budget increase would have been in relation to the carryover of the projects that hadn't been finished in 24-25, so they would have carried over their unspent funds into this current financial year.
Okay, thank you. That's all of my questioning. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Does anyone else wish to speak? No? Councillor Hungerford, would you like to close? No? Okay. In that case, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And thank you. That is carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms Dunbar, Ms Rudd. We move on to item 8.5, which is the sale of land for arrears of rates, and we welcome Ms Rudd back to the lectern to present this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, councillors and members of the executive team. This presentation relates to item 8.5, sale of land for arrears of rates. The sale of land for arrears of rates is an annual process that applies when rates and charges remain unpaid for at least 3 years. Under the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council may sell the land on which those rates or charges were applied. As the process moves forward, the number of affected properties usually decreases as landowners take steps to settle their outstanding balances. And the table on this slide shows how the process has worked over the past 5 years. Each year, the number of properties reduces steadily from January through to the ordinary meeting of that year, with only a small number proceeding to sale. Over this period of time, only 2 properties have been auctioned. As at the 6th of May 2026, 26 properties were included in the sale of land process, with overdue rates and charges totalling $424,474. Since then, 6 properties were removed between the 6th of May and the 21st of May, bringing the total to 20 properties with outstanding arrears of $341,443.74. An updated confidential attachment 1 has been provided today to accompany item 8.5 for councillors' consideration. Since the release of that attachment, we've had a further payment that's been received this morning. This relates to property number 12 on the confidential attachment 1, which will now be removed from the list. So that takes us to a current position of 19 properties with outstanding arrears of $331,510.20. It's also worth noting that some properties may have made recent payments but remain on the list, and that's because payments are applied to the oldest outstanding debt first, and in all cases the remaining overdue debt still exceeds 3 years. Most properties in the process are subject to a mortgage. In previous cases where a mortgage has been in place, the mortgagee has paid the outstanding rates in full to protect their interest. Council's made extensive efforts to communicate with affected landowners throughout the process, and this has included an advisory notice issued with the January 2026 rates notice, a follow-up letter sent in March 2026, and ongoing direct contact from our officers. The credit management team continues to work closely with affected tax ratepayers. This includes regular contact to explain their options, outline available support options, including referrals to external agencies and charitable organisations that can provide assistance, and outlining next steps to ratepayers. If Council adopts the recommendations in this report, the following statutory steps will apply. A notice of intention to sell would be issued in June 2026. An auction notice would follow in September 2026. And if required, the auction would take place in October 2026. Importantly, even after the process has commenced, it can be stopped at any time before auction if the full outstanding amount, including any reasonable costs, is paid. And this slide presents the recommendation before Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, can I have a mover for this item? Councillor Hungerford, a seconder, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Madam Mayor, seeing it comes under finance, it's my duty. This is not something we like to do, but this is a responsibility we have to ensure we raise the funds to carry their operations and fairness and equity to the rest of the community that's paid their rates on time. But we do have compassion here. It's not something we want to do. We work with the people as best we can to put payment plans and everything we can there to help them get there. And as can be seen, last year we only got down to one actually having been sold, and other years nil. And mortgagees do come to the party to protect their interests rather than being sold. This is one that, for me, it's a tragedy because we've got people here who are struggling, and it's a responsibility for all of us to pay our way in community, and it's one we work with them with compassion and empathy, and our staff do a brilliant job on that, getting back to each person and trying to work through it to help those people. At the end of the day, if that can't be achieved, then the money has to be raised for the services people receive and to deliver the things we need to in the community. So I commend this one, and I hope with the work you're doing that we do get down to nil again. There was only one last year, and about 3 or 4 years before that next time. And it's something we like to see, that we don't have to take things to auction. It's a responsibility we have, and we do that because we are committed to our responsibilities under the Act and to the community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. If there are no other councillors who wish to speak, Councillor, do you wish to close? No? Okay. I will put the motion to the vote then. All those in favour of the motion? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, team. Thank you. Okay, councillors, there are no notices of motion today, so we'll move on to petitions. Councillor Dixon, I believe you have a petition today.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor. The petition is install dedicated left turn arrow at Recreation Drive and Flintwood Crescent, Palmview. The petition is by Mel Neal, and the issue, I'll read the issue. My children and I cross the Recreation Drive and Flintwood Crescent intersection almost daily. Despite crossing lawfully on a green pedestrian signal, we've experienced multiple dangerous near misses with vehicles turning left and failing to give way. This crossing is used every day by families and young children, yet restricted sight lines from corner vegetation and a lack of a dedicated left turn arrow phase places pedestrians in a direct conflict with the turning traffic. After another very close call recently, it's clear the current layout is unsafe in practice. We are urgently seeking council to install a left turn arrow and improve visibility at this intersection before a serious injury occurs. Please sign this petition to help protect our community and its pedestrians. The petition has 222 signatures.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon's moved it, seconded Councillor Natoli. All of those in favour that this be referred to the CEO. But first we'll let you speak before I get you to put your hand up.
So the good news is the CEO will be very happy with this. Have already worked with staff behind the scene and we fixed the problem. Still want to present the petition. However, council staff have now gone out, whether that was the contractor or the internal staff. I drive past it every day. So they've taken out all the vegetation at the intersection. It's all gone completely. You can see, which is fantastic, because in smaller cars, you actually couldn't see if there were pedestrians crossing at the lights. The vegetation had grown so much. So that's done. We didn't put a dedicated left turn lane in light. What we actually did was the engineers went out and reconfigured the traffic lights. So the minute you press the button to cross, it doesn't let cars through so quickly. It has a significant delay now. So when a pedestrian pushes the button, I think they get 5 seconds now. Previously it was 2. The resident's gone on Facebook and commented and said, fantastic council, the pedestrian signals now work perfectly, the vegetation's gone, and she thanked council staff. So how good's that?
Okay.
Action complete.
All right, now before you hand it over, now we will take the vote to move that forward. So councillors in favour, please raise your hand. And that is carried unanimously. Councillor Dixon can now move that over to the CEO. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Thank you all for observing the process there for the standing orders. Thank you. Councillor Suarez, you have a petition.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I have a petition to the Sunshine Coast. The petition, as it was emailed to myself, is not exactly the same as the petition which was online on change.org, but the essence is essentially the same. For transparency, I have got a printed copy of the change.org transcript, as well as the transcript that was submitted. As of 11:20 p.m. last night, it had 1,151 signatures. The petition reads as follows. We, the undersigned, respectfully petition Sunshine Coast Council to undertake an urgent review of Amendment Subordinate Local Law No. 1 Animal Management 2026. As long-term residents of the Lake Weyba area, we formally challenge the decision passed on April 23, 2026 regarding dog exercise restrictions. Our community has been denied procedural fairness through a lack of meaningful consultation and transparency. Council justified bypassing the standard local law making process, specifically the publication of the draft laws for community feedback, by citing extensive consultation in 2025. However, of the 18 regional pop-up sessions held, 0 occurred in our community. Information regarding the Lake Weyba Foreshore was effectively buried on page 112 of a dense report and hidden in appendices, leaving residents uninformed until after the vote. We are responsible long-term ratepayers who have walked dogs on leash on these trails for over 30 years. It is contradictory to acknowledge on-leash access in other divisions while stripping it from ours without local representation. We call on the CEO and Councillor Maria Suarez to 1. Immediately suspend restrictions for the Lake Weyba Foreshore, 2. Conduct formal transparent consultations specifically with the affected Lake Weyba residents, and 3. Reinstate protected on-leash access for connecting trails.
Thank you. Councillor Suarez has moved for the petition. A seconder, Councillor Bunag. Councillor Suarez, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I present this petition regarding the Lake Weyba Bushland Reserve and the concerns raised by residents about the changes to dog access. This petition reflects strong community sentiment, particularly around the level of consultation and the clarity with which the local impacts of the dog exercise area plan were communicated.
Many residents have expressed genuine frustration that they were not aware of the specific implications for Lake Weyba until much later in the process. I acknowledge and respect these concerns. It also seems that there has been inference by some members of the community that all trails in this area are restricted. It is important to recognise this is not a blanket ban across the entire reserve, with a number of trails remaining available for dogs on lead. However, I understand that the restricted areas include sections highly valued by residents, and that has been the source of significant concern. In light of the volume of feedback, I request the CEO review the content of the petition and review council processes to ensure correct governance has been undertaken. I also note that all community feedback received, including this position, will be captured and recorded as council records to inform future reviews of the dog exercise area plan. And I thank petitioners for their advocacy and for raising these matters.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Okay, I'll put the motion now to the vote. Remembering that this is just to accept the petition. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And Councillor Suarez, if you could pass that on to the CEO. Thank you. Now, councillors, before we move into confidential session, do any of you wish to declare any personal interests in relation to item 11.1? The Chief Executive advises that item 11.1 contains confidential information relating to negotiations for the taking of land by the local government under the Acquisition of Land Act 1967 Queensland, the Act. For this reason, it is recommended Council move into confidential session in accordance with Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to consider and discuss the information in this report. Noting, of course, Council's decision on this item will be made during open session, which will be viewable by the public. So, councillors, is someone prepared to move we close the meeting to discuss agenda item 11.1? Councillor Dixon, seconder. Councillor Landsberg. I'll put that motion to the vote. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Welcome back. Welcome back to those on the live stream as well. And I note that Councillor Natoli was prepared to move this item and to second it, Councillor Hungerford. Thank you both. So, Councillor Natoli, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, we've been planning the Maud Street Sugar Road upgrades for quite a considerable amount of time, and as Councillor Hungerford mentioned today, you know, dealing with rates and arrears is a difficult thing, but also dealing with any compulsory acquisition of land is difficult as well. And we go through an incredible process to make sure that we offer fairness and we give the party that we're dealing with every opportunity to put their case forward. Unfortunately, we're at a situation where that no longer has allowed us to progress, and this is the only means left for us. The Act does support the Council in being able to take this process. This is for the good of everybody, everyone that uses that road, and unfortunately for some particular ratepayers, they will be disadvantaged. The courts will obviously deal with the compensation aspect of that after the decision the Minister makes, if it is a decision in our favour. Thank you.
Okay. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Natoli, do you wish to close? No? Okay, thank you all councillors. I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, team. Councillors, as we have no further items on today's agenda, I invite you all to join us for the special meeting budget, where we will consider and debate the budget on Monday, the 1st of June at 9 a.m. And I note that the next ordinary meeting will be Thursday, the 18th of June at 9 a.m. So I now declare this meeting closed at 12:59 p.m.